Now, I promise you on this Friday, I'm not going to be, or at least I'm trying not to be, old man yelling at clouds, okay? But I have a legitimate question that I'm going to ask to begin this program. And I'm curious the standpoint of the two of you, as well as our listeners. I need feedback on the following question, okay?
Sure. I keep doing that because it's National French Fry Day, and you said Happy Friday and feedback.
Is it really is it National Friday?
National French Fry Day. Can confirm.
We were talking about, we did an entire thing on French fries yesterday. This once again shows the power of this program. Do you guys realize do you ever just thank yourself that you have access to this sort of prognosticative power?
Every night before I go to bed, twice.
No. Because there's times where I think about things now because you bring them up and I can't sleep.
Such as what?
Just, the meaning of life sometimes.
Last night, I was fortunate enough, our friend Alex Golden had me come on his podcast, Setting the Pace as we know, and you bring up French Fry Day because we did, Jake, a French fry draft at the end of the podcast.
Perhaps he got it from the show yesterday.
We did. It's funny.
Again.
He might have, but he texted me that 10 minutes before we went into our French fry conversation. So it was a very whole weird wires crossing of life yesterday. But anyway, I did go with McDonald's with my first selection there, but the snake around for second and third pick, I made a very, very high-level move. I took both Five Guys and Penn Station fries, which, if you've been to either, they're kind of the same fry, but they're two power players. So I was very happy with my top three in that draft.
They are kind of the same fry.
They are.
So here's my question, since we know that we are trendsetters on this program. So I don't feel totally out of touch. I don't feel completely, like the guy that is walking around with a Sony Walkman, so to speak. I'm not getting ready to put another disc into my 6-disc CD changer,
How's the 8-track holding up at home?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not bumping to ELO on my 8-track and my Firebird on the way in this morning. But I am curious of this. And I could do this, I guess, as a Twitter survey.
You could put it on the poll of Query_Company if you wanted.
I could put it on the Query and Company Twitter account official survey poll. I could have people text me their answer.
Let's do the poll.
Eddie loves a good poll.
So, Eddie, here is and I will retweet this, okay?
Okay.
I want you to simply put this.
All right.
Did you watch more than 10 minutes of last night's ESPY Awards? Or you could just do it this. Are the ESPY Awards still a thing? Which question do you like better, Jimmy? Which one's more direct?
Are the ESPYs still a thing?
Okay. Then your three answers. If the question, Eddie, is...
Well, here's the problem. The ESPYs are definitely a thing, so there's going to be people who say yes without the context of listening to this program.
I would define a thing in this context as is a part of your life.
I think most people know when you ask that. Okay, then put quotations. Are the ESPYs a thing? I think people know what you're asking, but your options are yes, no, and then the third would be have they ever been? But because there are going to be some that are like but my point is this. I recall this is what numbered year for the ESPYs.
They don't do that. I don't know. It's just the 2024 ESPYs.
I'm asking you to guesstimate. 15th?
20th?
1993 was the first.
31?
So 20
okay.
Plus 10. Yeah, 31.
I remember when the ESPYs were indeed, but this is my question.
Sure.
Okay? I remember when the ESPYs were indeed a thing. But were they a thing, or was I in the target demographic of them? And to me, I think they're not a thing anymore, but that's because I've outgrown the demographic, and people that are the age that I was when it was a thing, it is still a thing to them.
When did it last feel like a thing for you? At what age? If you were to Just throw a number out there.
It seems to me, and again, when I was covering the Indianapolis Colts for WRTV and Peyton Manning was in his zenith, and he was involved in peripherally or part of the awards, whatever, of the ESPYs as a player for the Colts, it seemed to me like at that point there was this laser focus on it. But I think rather it might be that the national interest of it is the same as it is today. It's just that I was forced. It found its way into the echo chamber that I lived in. And so I thought, oh, wow, this is a thing, because suddenly the snow globe that I was living in, somebody shook it and all of the things started moving around me. It's like SportsCenter. I have said this 1,000 times about SportsCenter. You ask a 35-year-old person, do you watch SportsCenter? Like, I'll ask you guys. Eddie, I'll begin with you. Do you watch SportsCenter? Jimmy, do you watch SportsCenter?
I'm putting an X.
Okay.
But the reason I talk about it is I still watch SVP's SportsCenter. Does that really count?
Is
like,
that
I
Scott
always
Van
watch
Pelt?
Scott Van Pelt's SportsCenter because it's always on after Monday Night Football or after a big college football weekend. That's the only regular SportsCenter I'll watch, and that's in the evening. Whereas as a child,
Okay.
or like you're talking about, it was morning appointment
if you
television.
Had to, when did you watch? Did you at one time, Eddie, watch SportsCenter?
I did, yes.
Okay, and you were how old?
Probably up sophomore, junior, college.
Okay, and do you watch it now? You said you don't watch it now. Why do you not watch it now?
I think the product is crap.
Okay. Now here's the thing. This is what I find fascinating, because I think this is the case. When I was in college, SportsCenter was at what I believe it to be at its zenith. Dan Patrick, Keith Olbermann, and then that transitioned into like the Stuart Scott, booyah, as cool as the other side of the pillow, nothing but the bottom of the net, all of that. And so I think, well, that's when it was at its best. But then I outgrew the demographic, and when I was in my early to mid-30s, I'm like, dude, I never watch that anymore. It's totally lame. And I thought Stuart Scott was kind of a Dan Patrick imposter. But I would bet you that people that were 15 to 21 at that time were like, it's awesome. Are you kidding me? And then they became 30, and they're like, dude, it's so lame. Stuart Scott's not on there anymore. It's awful. But 15 to 21-year-olds are like, are you kidding me? It's awesome. Because the demographic, you're just outgrowing the demographic. The relevance to the target demo has never changed. But you've outgrown the target demo. That's my question. Now, and I feel like the ESPYs is the same way. It does feel like two things with the ESPYs. Number one, to me, seemingly every time I turn around, I'm like, they're doing this again? I thought this was just on 6 months ago. Because I think they replay it over and over and over. Jimmy V Week's kind of the same thing. But I also got confused by when they say, and now it's time for the ESPYs for best NFL team. And I think, didn't they settle that? It's the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Isn't that what the Super Bowl determines? The ESPYs for best NFL player goes to, shock, the guy that won NFL Player of the Year. But it was last night, right?
It was. A couple things with all of that. I've always known it was a summer thing because it's always at a point where, okay, there's nothing on the sports calendar really outside of, if you're a fan of international soccer, if you're watching Wimbledon, but there's nothing like stateside that is, of course, you're the WNBA, but you know what I mean? The major sports, it's close to the All-Star break. It's close to, for baseball and everything else in off-season mode. So I've always known it's a summer event, but like I had no idea it was last night. The only reason I even knew it was happening was because I happened to have the ESPN app on my phone, and I got push notifications as some of the awards were happening. In terms of the sports center of it all, and I would have to go look at Awful Announcing, or go look at Sports Business Journal or other outlets that track this kind of thing. I'm not denying that I've aged out of the demographic, but Sports Center itself, to my knowledge, and maybe I'm off base on this, it's been a year or two since I checked it, but their numbers across the board, even in the demographic you're referring to, that 18 to 25, or if you want to go lower than that, 10 to 20 type of range, it's been down across the board. They're not retaining as well as they did, say, through your childhood, through my childhood, through Eddie's childhood.
And then you get into a whole different talk show, Jimmy, which is the different variations in which those numbers are even accumulated.
Sure.
So it's virtually impossible for a lot of things to do the same television ratings because there are, streaming for a lot of it is not measured. A lot of times people record it, watch it later. That doesn't factor in. There's a lot that
They've
goes into
also
it.
changed the product, Jake, as we've known. Everybody's I don't even mean like the fact that it's not highlights anymore. That's something that I think bugs your generation, bugs me and Eddie's as well. But like a lot of it is around this time of year, especially what's happening with Dak Prescott, what's happening with the Dallas Cowboys, what's happening with LeBron James, what's happening with the Lakers, what's happening with the Celtics. It is very mainstream, top of the sport, whereas I feel like when we were growing up, they did a good job of whip around coverage of the entire country, and now they're playing what they hope gets them the most numbers, which is the top of the food chain.
I think that goes back to just like how journalistic integrity is in today's age, and plus, like, I think the big part for me and you, Jimmy, growing up was SportsCenter's top 10. Like, that was the one thing we always
web gem, absolutely.
Yeah, web gems, stuff like that, and now it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram, X, whatever. Instantly, minutes after the play happens, so it takes away
the big thing with it for sure is the fact that it's been impacted by, and I'm talking about just like SportsCenter. We'll begin with that. In 1995, for example, when I was in college, if you heard about, the summer of '98 is a prime example. The summer of '98, the Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa home run derby. When I was working in local television at that time, and I mean, every night at 11 o'clock, I had to sit at 10:20 and watch the feeds come down to see if either of the two of them had hit a home run because everyone tuned into their 11 o'clock news to see McGwire hit another one, Sosa hit another one, Sosa just hit two of them. Oh, my gosh. And you couldn't wait to get it on the air and to tune in at 11:22 to see the latest home run. I mean, now, obviously, it goes without saying. Somebody hits a home run that's amazing, it's on your phone within 30 seconds of it happening, no matter where you are in the world. So that does impact it. But, and I know, several people have told me, like, I don't watch it. There's too much. I get a kick out of this. I don't watch it because they've turned it into too much social crap. And then the next person writes in and says, it doesn't have social relevance anymore. Well, which is it? It's either socially abundant or socially vapid. It's one or the other, right? I just think that it's a matter of the demographic and the age in which you're watching.
Here's where I would totally agree with you on that. Outside of SVP, Scott Van Pelt, SportsCenter, which, again, we mentioned, it's usually, I think it's every night at midnight once, like, the college football season starts, and it goes all the way until the end of the NBA Finals. I think that's his schedule.
He just wrapped up, like, 2 weeks ago, I think.
For the summer break. So I still watch that. And Scott Van Pelt was a big deal for my generation of SportsCenter anchors, so maybe that's why I still watch him. But I also find myself, and I know there's people older than me that do the same. Jake, if I was to tell you to guess what original ESPN programming I still watch on an almost daily basis, what show would you say it is?
A television show.
An original ESPN programming show that I still watch on a daily basis.
Do they have a gambling show?
It's a good one, but there is an ESPN bet.
Baseball tonight.
No, but that's a good guess. Eddie, you have any guess? Original ESPN programming show that I still watch on a daily basis.
Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon.
Pardon the Interruption. Pardon the Interruption is the last show that I still watch regularly because I remember coming home from school and watching Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser debate the topics of the day. And that's a show that still does solid numbers for ESPN. It's why it's lasted as long as it has. But, Jake, it's really the last line of that original ESPN programming, at least from my generation and some of yours, that still exists on that platform.
Jake, as we get older and more knowledgeable about facts, I think the national media BS aspect of it is such a turnoff for real sports fans. Was ESPN providing alternate facts to the outcome of games that I'm unaware of?
I don't understand. This is where, again,
I got smarter and realized that the Yankees really didn't win that game.
This is where the line between socio commentary and sports gets blurred. Like, I don't view ESPN as some agent of fake news. Like, it's just they've put an emphasis more on the bigger markets than they ever have before because they feel like that's going to get the most retention and the most eyeballs. And it's been that way for the last 10 years. Like it's you can go further than that. When Brady was dominating the charts, like it was Tom Brady. What's Kobe Bryant doing? What's LeBron James doing? Like they have moved away from catering to a curated highlight package of what happened the night before, and that's still sprinkled in a bit, to stories on figures that are polarizing or that fit where they think the most eyes will watch and stay for longer than 30 seconds.
Well, and I think a big part of it is this.
And that does go back to demographics.
And we now live in a world where
instant gratification.
The sports coverage in television is now regionalized to the point where if you are a fan of the Cincinnati Reds or the Indiana Pacers or the New Orleans Pelicans, and they just got done playing their game and you found out that they beat, you were at dinner and you were like, oh gosh, did you hear Zion Williamson hit a game winner tonight, whatever, and you got home right then, you know that you can turn on Bally's, Louisiana, or whatever
Sure.
it might be, and it is specified towards your team. So you don't need to turn on SportsCenter to find out what happened with your team.
Right.
And ESPN is aware of that, and so they're saying, look, the regionalized teams are – that information is kind of plucked from us, so we are going to go with what is the biggest national draw because that has the largest number of eyeballs there. And so if 40% are going to a regional network, we still get a larger number of leftover Yankees fans that live in Des Moines.
Sure.
Or Lakers fans that live in Dubuque.
Sure.
So I get why they do it that way.
And
right?
they've put a bigger emphasis, which I don't blame them for this either, as the contract wars or the media rights wars have happened, you will see a program like SportsCenter become a vehicle to force feed what happened in the NHL playoffs the night before or the NBA game that night. Like they will particularly curate their stuff to content they own to keep retention up that way.
Here's another thing that happened. And by the way, good afternoon to you. My name is Jay Query. That is Jimmy Cook, Eddie Garrison here as well. It is Query & Company here on The Fan. Yes, in fact, it is an ESPN radio property. I realize that. Pat Boylan going to join us 1 o'clock today. Tony East at 2 o'clock. A lot to talk about. One thing that did happen about 10 years ago, and I've mentioned this before, but once we went and shifted from the era where people had a homogenized cable package, 20 years ago, if you had cable television, it came from one of three providers probably in your market. And in that, you had virtually everybody had the same channels. They're over-the-air channels, and then they had TBS and TNT and the movie channel and MTV, ESPN, etc., WTBS, WGN. Once we got into the era, and of course you had the people that had the huge satellite dishes in their backyard. Once that dish thing became a possibility for everybody via whether it be DirecTV or Xfinity or streaming or YouTube television or whatever else, once television networks became the wild, wild west and it was manifest destiny and you had all of this open land and real estate, and they said, wait a minute, people now have the ability to have 250 channels. There's channel 232 is the Malaysian ping pong channel, and you can watch guys and gals playing table tennis in Malaysia 24 hours a day. Once that open real estate was there, then NBC, Fox, and CBS looked at it and said, okay, ESPN is an ABC-owned, Disney-owned company, and they're paying out the wazoo for broadcast rights for different sporting events. They have monopolized the sports market, and it's hard for us to get and make a dent in that. But what we can do is make a dent in their bottom line by forcing them to overpay for broadcast rights. So Fox launched FS1 and FS2. NBC launched NBC Sports Network and Peacock. And before that, they acquired Versus.
Paramount for CBS.
CBS, and they launched the CBS Sports Network and Paramount. And they did that as basically a poker play to flirt with and say, and they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to threaten to overbid for Major League Baseball and the NHL and the NBA. And we're going to do so by telling them we have all this real estate where we can put these teams. That's why we've launched FS1 and FS2 and all those networks that I just mentioned. And ESPN and ABC, because that was their bread and butter, said, oh my gosh, we've got to up the ante here on what we're paying for Major League Baseball and for the NBA and everything else. And they overpaid. And it affected their bottom line, and they started losing money because they were overpaying for that programming. And the other networks went, job well done. Guess what? Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, you guys, you're just going to do a show for 30 minutes a day and say outlandish things so that people on social media are constantly talking about how there's a show on FS1 and a show on FS1 and a show on FS1. And we're doing it because FS1 was nothing more than an initial real estate bluff, but we need to let people know that it does exist as a network, so just keep it in the headlines until the next round of network broadcast rights comes up and we can, again, make a pitch for it. And now the price baby will be able to get it because ESPN is going to back away because they overpaid the last 2 cycles. That's how that all came about. But I just was curious about the ESPYs last night and whether or not, how many people actually watched it, because it did seem like appointment viewing, but I am smart enough to know that probably is because at one point the appointment was intentionally made to me because I was 25, not 50.
Early returns on the poll at @query_company on X/Twitter. 50.7% no, 45.3% were they ever, in regards to are the ESPYs still, quote, a thing, 4% yes, 75 votes in.
So say that one more time.
Are the ESPYs still a thing is the question on Twitter, @query_company. 50.7% of the people so far have said no. Of the 75 votes, 45.3% have said were they ever, 4% yes.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Now, the other thing that comes into play, and I've always said this, 2 ways that you can do sports talk radio. I'm not going to name any names as to disparage any like chain restaurants, because I do like chain restaurants. I eat at them a lot. But there are some restaurants that are chain restaurants that are perfectly good. Good food, but people are like, I like local. If you're on the road, you got to stop overnight and give me a middle market city that doesn't have a lot of NFL teams, but you've always heard about it. Jimmy, go. Boom.
Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City doesn't have you're right. They have an NBA. I said NFL, so you're correct. So Oklahoma City. You're on business. You're staying in Oklahoma City. You don't know much about Oklahoma City. Right across the street from your hotel is a major national restaurant chain. You go there because you're like, I know what's on the menu. I know what they have. It's fine. I'll enjoy it. It tastes good to me. I like it. It's familiar, right? So that's where you go to eat. But when you go to a Chicago or a New York or a Los Angeles, you want a place that there are a million restaurants of great local flair and cuisine that are renowned, and so it's less likely that you're going to go to that chain restaurant when you're in one of those places. Likewise, if you live in Indianapolis or Kansas City or Cincinnati, you become familiar with the local cuisine, and thus it's less likely that you are going to, with frequency, go to that chain restaurant, even though that chain restaurant is perfectly fine. In sports talk radio, you can do chain restaurant radio where you're talking about and you have the things on the menu that across the board everybody knows, and people that are in from out of town are familiar with your quesadilla. And that's talking about LeBron, the Yankees, the Patrick Mahomes, and whoever is the hot team in the NFL. And what's that?
Dallas Cowboys.
And the Dallas Cowboys.
Aaron Rodgers.
That's franchise, chain restaurant radio. But I like to think that because we're in Indianapolis, that we are providing you the St. Elmo's shrimp cocktail and the Basbo's pizza and Milk Tooth and the things that are indigenous to here that you can't get when you go elsewhere.
The tenderloin.
The tenderloin. Yes, that is correct. So that's what we aim to do each and every day, and there's nothing wrong with the way that ESPN is doing it, but they are catering to a different audience that is passerby and piecemealing what they're eating. That's the easiest way to say it. Now, Pat Boylan going to join us coming up at the top of the hour. Matter of fact, speaking of the ESPYs, now I'm going to contradict myself, but Caitlin Clark did win one last night, correct?
Yes.
Best college athlete, right?
Yes.
And somebody made reference to the fact that there is a poll out now that says that Angel Reese has moved in front of in the latest weekly poll of best WNBA player. And like, how can that be? And I'm like, I'll tell you how it can be, because you're talking about it, right? Like I just did on radio in Indianapolis. That's the bottom line. That's the point. But Pat going to join us 1 o'clock, Tony East at 2 o'clock, as we now shift things over towards Summer League and the Pacers and what's going on with that particular roster. Jimmy, you do anything fun last night besides not watch the ESPYs?
Like I mentioned, spent a little bit of time with our friend Alex Golnover and setting the pace, and talked a lot about Team USA, Andrew Nemhart of Team Canada, and a look ahead to Summer League. So it was a good night talking hoops with one of our favorites.
All right, speaking of the Summer League, that conversation is next here on a Friday. Good for the Heart Friday coming up at 2:30. Going to talk to somebody that does a lot of work with youth here in Indianapolis, and something very cool happened in terms of a little girl that made us all proud. I'll explain when we do that coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. It's Query & Company here on a not necessarily French Fry Friday, but a Friday nonetheless. So Summer League getting underway, 8 o'clock tonight, right? It is the Pacers and the Brooklyn Nets. That's the Pavilion in Las Vegas. Now, is the Pavilion, that's different than the Thomas and Mack Center, right?
So it's all the same
complex.
They're attached. You don't have to go outside into the sweltering Vegas heat. It's all attached to the same concourse. Thomas and Mack is at like the far west end, if I remember correctly. Cox Pavilion's on the west end. And then when you leave Cox Pavilion, Scott Agnes described it to us yesterday, that spot is like a high school gym setup, more like of a homely feel to it. And then when you leave there and go into the concourse directly in front of you, you'll see the entrance to Thomas and Mack and be right there. So it's all very close proximity to one another, all in the same building.
Now, when, like at Eastwood, we had a new gym and old gym. At Ron College, you have a new gym and old gym? You just have one gym?
When I was there, one gym. Now there's new gym, old gym.
Okay. So is this the same thing? You would hang out in the hallway between the new gym and the old gym. That's where the concession stand was. So you'd hang out there. That's where all the action was, like during the middle school basketball games. And I was playing, granted, but when I was in 7th grade, when the 8th grade game was going on, you'd hang out and loiter in the hallway between the new gym and the old gym. Same thing at North Central. They had a new gym and old gym. And all the socializing took place. So is this the same? If you go to the Summer League, can you just hang out between the Pavilion and the Thomas and Mack? And it's like, I'm going to get some Laffy Taffy. And look, there's Jordan.
Well, it's weird that you say that because it kind of happened in opposite order. Thomas and Mack came first. And then in around 2001, they added Cox Pavilion as a smaller attachment practice court.
New gym, old gym, right?
Yes, correct. I just mean it's in our way of thinking with that, usually the new gym is the one that has all the upgrades and the fancy bells and whistles, and the old gym is the one that looks archaic. It's kind of the opposite with Thomas and Mack because Thomas and Mack is the main home for UNLV men's and women's basketball. It's always a state-of-the-art, college basketball arena. And then a Cox Pavilion has more of a feel of, like I said, smaller high school gym. Maybe if you were to go see a lower conference in college basketball play, I'm just going to single out, Detroit, the Mercy, the Detroit Flames, beg your pardon. No, UIC Flames. Is it Detroit Mercy? Was it right the first time? I don't know. But you got my point.
Detroit's the Titans, right?
Are they the Titans?
I think. UIC is the Flames.
Correct. I'm mixing Horizon League teams now.
I think Detroit and Mercy. Can you look that up? I believe it's the Titans. Like the year that they were 0-31 under Mike Davis, people were like, remember the Titans.
They are.
And then they won their last game of the year.
They are the Titans.
They're the Detroit Mercy Titans.
That's what I just said.
I thought you said they are the Titans. Did he not say that? Do you understand what I'm correcting him on? Did I miss that? Did you say they are the Titans or they are the Mercy Titans?
The school is Detroit Mercy.
Okay.
Their mascot is the Titans.
Okay.
Therefore, they are the Titans.
Can I interrupt to say, what are we doing here?
I don't know. Eddie Charles trying to pick fights. Anyway, with the analogy I was trying to make there, if you've seen a game in Detroit, it always looks like a smaller, condensed high school gym. That's kind of what
correct
Cox Pavilion looks like.
Wasn't it this year where Detroit Mercy, the Titans, I'm hazing both of you, wasn't it this year where they were winless and they finally beat IUPUI and one guy stormed the court? And it looked like one guy rushing out like at Eastern Hancock High School.
Yes.
Well, not to, we can say now, we can laugh that it's IUPUI because now they're IU Indy, right?
Right,
so,
and it's a new era over there. Paul Casaro's got him on the right track.
That's right. But one dude rushed the court and was like, let's go.
What a moment. Selfies with
stuff,
the team.
Right? So Summer League, what are you looking for tonight in terms of, if anything, this installment of the Pacers in Brooklyn?
The roster is kind of unique, right? Because we're not having that entree of this was a lottery pick. This was a clear player that is a part of this from this past draft, right? I know Jarris Walker's going to be out there, and he's probably the biggest piece that I'm monitoring because you just want to see how he looks against, in theory, a crop of players that he should be the best one on the floor. Like Jarris Walker at this stage should be one of the best players on the floor in these Summer League games, certainly the most polished player on these Pacers roster. On top of that, Jake, Johnny Furphy, what his role is going to be as a Pacer, yet to be determined. We've mentioned that the Sam Hauser comp, if you watch the Celtics run to the finals, is he just going to be a three-point threat every now and again? Is he going to be a Doug McDermott replacement potentially as he gains more minutes, as he develops as a rookie? I don't know what that will be for him, but this is the first taste of Johnny Furphy in a Pacers uniform. So for me, those are probably the two things I'm most focused on. What about you? Is there anything that jumps off the page?
And it's very early, and it's kind of irrelevant for this, but I want to see how quick a release Johnny Furphy has. Because I think that the Pacers are in need. This is a very young Pacer team in general. I'm talking about the roster, not the Summer League roster. So there's, for Furphy, you have, because they're deep, they have the ability and the luxury to let him grow organically and let him sit and learn for a year, if not two, and probably spend a lot of time in the G League just kind of getting reps. But he is young enough that he can still, even if he were to, for example, he's 19 years old, right? He's Australian. He just got done, played 1 year of major college basketball. Even with that, if he were to take 2 years before he's blended in with the Pacers, he still could be entering in and break into rotation when they are in peak window era. It's not like they need somebody to come along right now. So both of them have that luxury of that flexibility of time frame. But what they're going to need, not knowing, of course, what happens in terms of trades or other signings they might do next year, but what they're going to need with this group, as Halliburton gets older, as Nesmith matures, as Nembhard becomes, more and more a staple, all of that, they still are going to need, if this is the roster right now that they're going to have as a matured version of that in another 2 or 3 years, the one thing it lacks is a quick release off-curl spot-up shooter. Not even spot-up. So I said that wrong. Not even spot-up. Literally coming across the baseline, catch, turn, and pop. Quick release guy. And I'm curious to see. I haven't seen a lot of him. We fall victim to, I certainly do, and absolutely raise my hand as guilty as charged. We fall victim sometimes to seeing a guy, and in trying to determine what kind of player he is, the first thing we see is what player does he physically look like, and the second is what player came through the same system. So therefore, you look at Johnny Furphy and you go, oh, wait a minute. A 6'7", 6'8", skinnier white guy from Kansas, that's Grady Dick, right? And you automatically assume that's how he plays. I don't know if that's the case, but I know that the way that the skill set that Grady Dick has and what we saw out of him at Kansas is exactly what the kind of player the Pacers could use, and that is a quick release off of a curl shooter. And I'm curious to see how comfortable he looks doing that or how long it takes him to look comfortable doing that. My guesstimate is because it was only in the last probably 40% of the year for Kansas that he really started to find his footing. And even then, he wasn't, not like it's a guy that was getting 35 minutes and 20 points a night. I'm also curious to see how Ben Shepherd plays and reacts to what some would see as demotion's the wrong word. But I would think if you're a rookie that goes into the NBA, and once you're in the NBA, you are getting significant minutes and in rotation, especially late in games, and you're starting, albeit due to attrition and other such things, but you're starting a game deep in the playoffs, you're probably thinking to yourself, this is awesome. Sweetheart, we're going to take a vacation in July. Well, not so fast, because you've got to go to the Summer League.
They did do that last year, though, right? So it's not totally out of precedent for the Pacers. Was it Nembhard and Eddie? Who else was out there last year?
Did Ben play Mathurin?
Yes, that was it.
They each played a game, right?
They Scott mentioned that yesterday. They were quick to the floor and they were out. They just got a quick little taste of Summer League, and then you never really saw them again because there were other development pieces that they want. So perhaps this is just that for Ben Shepherd. Jake, another avenue. It's not consequential to the roster, but for the local tie-in, because it goes to a deeper level than just, oh, hey, here's who the Pacers drafted or here's who they selected. The idea of seeing Dakota Mathias again or seeing Lance Jones to Purdue products. I know that Mathias has been out for a couple of years from the Purdue system as he's, pursued his professional career, but having that Purdue connection and Lance Jones specifically after the run to the national title game, it's good to see him still pursuing the NBA dream and getting to do it locally. I'm curious to see what they do out in Summer League, what's asked of them, and then what comes next.
I was on the way here, stopped at the gas station close to downtown. Guy in front of me in line, he was probably 6'8", 6'7", 6'8", and he was wearing a Nuremberg Falcons like kind of pullover and Euro League, some sort of NBA Euro, or not NBA, but Euro League basketball shorts and like high tops. And I thought to myself, I didn't ask who it was. I was curious. I mean, there are so many players from this area that play overseas, and then, in the summer league as well. I didn't ask who it was, but I thought to myself, that's my spirit animal, because that's a guy that either tried out for or played for that team and kept all the swag, which is what I do in summer league, right?
You didn't ask him to sign your Diet Mountain Dew?
No. I was more transfixed by the fact that he absolutely is my spirit animal and was like, sure. What? I realize I'm playing for the Nuremberg Falcons for a year, but can I get as much free practice gear as possible? Yep. I would load up. Are you kidding me? I would load up.
You think there's anything Shepard needs to prove? Because, to me, when I look at the rotation, even for next season, the expectation is Walker starts to get some minutes. Shepard could be the one that's squeezed out of the rotation.
I think that's a fair possibility or assumption. I also think in Shepard's case, what he needs to show, because maybe I'm just going with power of suggestion in my mind, I think he shot the ball fairly well in the postseason, but I do think that his three-point shot seemingly became kind of less and less reliable as the year went on, kind of as the rookie legs came in. And I want to see that he can get back in rhythm of being a little bit faster release again. Instead, he is a true spot-up shooter.
It was weird because it did come back in the postseason.
It did.
You're right. You saw that decline over the course of the regular season, and then he caught lightning in a bottle for a large portion of the playoffs. Was that an anomaly, or is that something that he legitimately has in his bag in terms of consistency that can make him an invaluable piece of the rotation? I would be curious, and I've had different versions of this conversation over the last couple of weeks, what the Pacers rotation, especially that second unit, winds up looking like next year, because you're going to have tough decisions to make. At some point, you would think Benedict Mathurin earns a spot as a starter. If he does not, that complicates then what you're doing with your second unit. And if Jarris Walker winds up getting more minutes, like Eddie alludes to, which I think is very possible, would it be Shepard that's the guy with the short end of the stick? Would it be Isaiah Jackson? Could it be Obi Toppin, that are two guys that are closer to Walker's position? I don't know. It's all very interesting, but they're good problems to have, Jake, because as you've outlined, it speaks to the depth of this team.
You know what I was just thinking about that's going to be fun during Christmas time now with the new Pacers roster?
Yeah.
They've already got, if they want to do, what is it called? Pardon I can't believe that I'm forgetting the word. A nativity scene.
Yeah.
They already have now. They have a Shepard and a Wiseman, right?
They do.
They're on their way here. They just need a couple. If James Wiseman can bring a couple of family members over, I mean, we're good to go here, right?
You think there's a frankincense or myrrh out there on the free agent wire?
I mean,
you think that's
honestly,
possible?
There's got to be. I'm trying to think of. Didn't they have Christmas? They had a Christmas player a couple of years ago, right? Can we get him back?
Rakeem Christmas.
Yes. Bring back Rakeem Christmas and then pair him with Shepard and Wiseman. I mean, the marketing possibilities here at the skating rink out front are endless.
And if they needed to partner with the Indianapolis Colts on anything, they have a Taylor.
Yes, see? I'm telling you. Right now, do you see the kinds of it starts going and then Eddie, it's contagious. I have a question for you guys next. If you know anybody, now pay attention, folks. If you know anybody that does drywall or wall repair, I have a question for you. And I might have a job where I'm willing to pay, but it's going to take a very skilled laborer. If you are in the drywall business or you know anybody in what I'm assuming I'm going drywall here, I'm going to explain a little home improvement project where I need some help and I'm willing to hire somebody, but it's a very specified order.
What did Boo do?
Wait till you hear this one. And Pat Boylan joining us at the top. question of the day. My cell phone number, because I am eager to hear from anybody that might be able to help out in this predicament. My cell phone number is 317-523-9288. That's 523-9288. In 1978, my parents brought my family. I mean, they're from Indy, but we lived in Shelbyville. My parents both born and raised in Indianapolis and wanted us to grow up in Indianapolis. So they bought the house that I grew up in the summer of 1978. And I moved in with my family, obviously, just prior to starting kindergarten. My parents, thankfully, of good health and, but still live in that same house. So I grew up, I'm the youngest of three. My entire schooling years were spent in that house. Every Christmas, every birthday party, you name it, in that house. Obviously, like anybody, I know that Father Time is undefeated and times change. And my parents have now decided that they have, in fact, the house is too much for them. And so they are finally moving into an area that is better for them to live. I understand it. Doesn't mean I like it, but I understand it. Here is my question. The bedroom that I had a very cool closet. And when I was a really little kid, it was the best fort ever. I mean, it was great. And my friends and I, all of my friends growing up, chronicled essentially our entire, we did growth chart, in terms of how tall we were. Every girl that we had a crush on is written in that wall from 1980 all the way through. I mean, we carried the tradition all the way through college. At that point, obviously, kind of more in flippant tradition than anything. But there are probably on that wall in that room of the house, there have to be 45 different inscriptions from myself and every one of my friends, either about our favorite baseball team or it's like a yearbook. It's like a yearbook of inscriptions and writings and doodling of my entire, essentially, transgression of life. If my parents are selling this house and moving, which I understand, the house is nothing but memories for me. This doesn't make me unique. It doesn't make me special. It doesn't make me different. I think most people have this, and this is a rite of passage and a part of life growing up. But what I want to know is this. The wall that I'm talking about is probably, I'm going to guess it's 3 feet high by 5 feet wide. Is it possible for somebody in the drywall, or I don't even know what you call it, walling business, to come in with some sort of a saw and take out that part of the wall, almost like a basketball backboard, if you will, and allow me so that I can keep that and take it and move it and, keep it, and then obviously repair the wall for whoever buys the house. I mean, I'm not asking somebody I'm not going in to destroy my parents. Wouldn't be the first time probably. But is it possible, does anybody know, to literally remove that section of the wall of my childhood bedroom that has all of that stuff on it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's multiple tools that you could use. You could go to the store, whether that's Lowe's, Menards, Home Depot, whatever. You can get a drywall knife, and you can just cut it yourself if you wanted to, and then you should be able to pop it out. And then all you have to do is find drywall replacement, bud that puppy.
But here's the thing. I don't trust myself to do it. And I can't have no offense, Eddie, but I can't just find some guy off the street that's I could totally get this hat. This is like George Costanza with the Frogger machine. I have to have this done very specifically so that it doesn't crumble or fall apart.
Can we have Eddie do it and live stream it just for the drama of not ruining Jake Query memories?
You have no idea how stressed I would be. Huh?
It's not that hard. It's a relatively simple procedure.
But one screw up ruins all of it.
Eddie has that bedside
It would just depend
care.
if there's anything behind the wall. Also, like, is there
Okay,
a
so-
stud or is there wires?
I mean, a stud grew up in it. But
I said behind the wall, not in the room.
so, and build your own closet joke here also. But so this is like my childhood bedroom has the closet itself is a 3-leveled closet. The closet's probably 4 feet wide, but this is the wall. If you were to go into the closet, it's almost like a walk-in closet. It's the wall between the closet and then the other side of the wall is my bedroom.
I'm committed to seeing Eddie do this now.
By the way, what would you do with this anyway?
What do you mean?
You get it framed?
What would you frame
it's
it?
probably the size of like a little bit bigger than a flag.
What, you're cutting a hole out of the wall at the apartment and you're putting that in the spot where
No, I would. I would. Honestly,
he could do one of those
I
things.
would probably prop it up like in a closet. It's just and occasionally look at it, to be honest with you. It literally is 25 years of memories. I mean, there's one person, for example, that signed it who is no longer with us. I'll bet I have 20 different childhood friends that have signed that wall, written about who they're and then likewise it comes into play that all of the girls that I grew up with and I'm friends with, their names are there because we talked about crushes on them, and I mean all kinds of stuff. Bumper stickers.
You could do one of those things where you put it in like the middle of a hollowed out table and they pour, I don't know what the substance is they pour in it, but it makes it a solid table. Like people do that when they'll
exactly.
break a glass bottle.
There's something you can do with it, right?
Sure.
I mean, my mom said, Jake, for what it's worth, you used to narrate ball games onto a tape recorder in that closet because there was the most soundproof area.
So does that mean we need to move the whole room now?
Here's the thing. I think I wanted my parents to hold out on this long enough for when the house would become a part of the Indiana Historical Society for the sign in the front yard of it being my childhood home. But apparently, what? Father time undefeated. Pat Boylan next. Now, somebody said I could hire somebody they think for $80 to do the job. You think $80 will cover it?
No idea.
I would be shocked.
Now, why would that shock you, Eddie? Eddie, I didn't know that you have this secret drywall skill. Sounds to me like you're holding out for the job yourself.
No. I would just say I would just be shocked because of supplies and then labor and cost.
It was also pointed out by several people, which I understand. Jake, just buy the house. I get that.
Yeah, you could do that, Jake.
I understand, but there is something like, I mean, your entire purpose in life is to launch away from your parents' house, right? You don't necessarily want to move back into, not that there's anything wrong with that. I would have to make the master bedroom my old bedroom. I couldn't have the master bedroom be my parents' bedroom.
No, make it Boo's mansion.
That's not a bad. You know what? Wouldn't it be great if I just bought it, never moved into it, just turn it into a dog and cat sanctuary?
There you go.
That's an idea.
Joining us now in the program, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so based on that segue. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. And, of course, you hear him not only on the Pacers broadcast, but also covering the Fever as well, Pat Boylan. And, Pat, I will begin with this. I thought that was clearly a disappointment, I think, for the Fever in terms of an afternoon game against Washington, which is one that you hope they don't, at the end of the year, look back and circle and go, gosh, that one really did us in not getting that game. It's just one game, albeit. But what did go wrong for them in that outing?
Yeah, I think the last 5 days or so have been a perfect encapsulation of just the highs and lows and the growing pains of having a young, talented team. You go out and beat the best team in the WNBA on Saturday on a national television platform, and then you come back and you lose to the Washington Mystics, who, I don't want to sit here and suggest that they're a good team, but they've been much, much better since their horrible start, Washington. They're 6-5 in their last 11. This is a team that has very capable players on it. So I wouldn't call them a bottom feeder, even though they're technically near the bottom of the standings. They've been playing much, much better lately. Christy Side spent a lot of time in practice marching home the directive of we can't have a letdown. It's the game after the game. And whether that specifically was the issue or something else, unfortunately, the Fever did have a bit of a letdown on Wednesday. They got into an early hole. Aaliyah Boston got into some significant foul trouble, which is really challenging. If you look at the Fever and their stretch before that loss, they were 6-3 over their last 9. And in that stretch, Aaliyah Boston had been averaging 18 points, 10 rebounds, 59% shooting. Obviously, all the spotlight or most of the spotlight is going to be on Caitlin Clark, who's been brilliant herself. But it's almost undermined a little bit just how good Boston has been and just how important she's been to this recent run. And unfortunately, she got into some significant early foul trouble, came back in, got into more foul trouble, and was never really able to establish herself. The Fever got down by 21 to start the fourth quarter, and that's just a situation where you're clearly setting yourself up for failure. They had a terrific fourth quarter run there. Gave themselves a real shot. They were down 3 in the final minute with a jump ball that they lost, and had a brilliant response and late charge. But you've got a young, talented team like this, but you're going to experience some disappointing nights. You're going to experience some high highs, and you just hope at the end of it all, it equates to where you want to be, which is in the playoffs, which is right now where they are. They currently have the 8th spot, and with a game tonight against Phoenix, a very winnable one. They won in Phoenix about a week and a half ago. If you win tonight, you move into a tie for 7th, which you currently have the tiebreak on Chicago. So all in all, they're still in a pretty good spot here, and it's amazing to think this will be game number 24 of a 40-game season. So we're hitting 60% the way through here tonight. It all comes very quickly. We'll, of course, have the Olympic break coming up soon, which will put a pause on everything. But this Fever season is fairly well past the midway point right now, and I think you can start looking at the playoff picture pretty closely.
Pat Boylan is our guest, TV voice of the Indiana Fever. Pat, I'm glad you brought up the Olympic break because it's a point that I've brought up in our conversations about this team, in other national conversations that we've seen about this team of, yes, there's still a lot of basketball left to be played, but you mentioned it, about 60% of the season complete at that point, and you can really start to see the horizon of the end of the season and where the Fever hope is a playoff berth in their future. When you evaluate, and I know you went over it, 6-3 in their last 9 prior to the loss against Washington, but when you evaluate their last 10 or 11 games and the importance of finishing strong these final 3 games before the Olympic break, where would you evaluate where they are in terms of, is everything still in front of them? Are there still glaring weaknesses that we saw in the gauntlet to open the season? Where's the best evaluation of where this team is at, and did they achieve what they needed to with the Olympic break on, right around the corner?
It's interesting because at the beginning of the season was obviously such a massive challenge with the schedule, and they got off to the 1-8 start and a lot of outside noise and negativity. And then they've had this just pretty impressive response, which has been led by just terrific Caitlin Clark. And as we discussed, Aaliyah Boston play. And it sort of felt like the Fever have lived in these extremes all season long, the high highs, the low lows, and the spotlight that Clark brings has obviously only added to that. But when you kind of balance it all out, look, if you had asked me if you had told me that Caitlin Clark would be where she is statistically right now, that the Fever would be, right in that 7 or 8 spot, I would have said that's a pretty decent spot to be at this point in the season. To the point of your question, I think these 3 games coming up before the Olympic break are really key. You want to be feeling good because you're going to be off for more than a month. The Olympic break is it's something like 35, 36 days between games. It's pretty unprecedented outside of the WNBA and other professional sports. You just don't see leagues take a month off midway through the season. It's something the WNBA players have dealt with for a long time, but it's a unique dynamic that you really can't compare it to much, if anything else. And so when you're off for that long, you want to go into it, I think, with some confidence. It's like going into halftime. If you can finish out the last couple of minutes strong going into halftime, sometimes that relays its way into a strong third quarter. And I think there's some comparisons there, too. It's a pretty interesting final 3 games coming into the Olympic break. Tonight against Phoenix, I think a very winnable game for them. Diana Taurasi is out. You're then going to go to Minnesota, who's third in the standings, but right now their best player, Nafisa Collier, is out and might be for that one. And then you're going to close at Dallas, who is at the very bottom of the WNBA standing. So none of the games I think you would say are a sure thing, but at the same time, none of them really look overly daunting either. And I think if you could go maybe 2-1 in this stretch to get to the Olympic break, I think you'd feel really good about where you are then, because they'll probably be in 7th position if that's the case. And the other really good thing that they have is, at least right now, they put themselves in a great tiebreaker spot. Phoenix is in 6th. Indiana's 1-0 against Phoenix. Chicago's in 7th. Indiana's 2-1 against Chicago. Atlanta's the spot behind them in 9th, and the Fever are 2-0 against Atlanta. You get a win tonight, and you're in a great spot to have all of the tiebreakers you would need should you end up needing a tiebreaker type scenario. So they're in a good spot. There's obviously improvements that need to be made as the season continues and as we get out of the break. And defensively, probably stands out to me the most among those areas. But in general, I think the trend line is very, very good here. Caitlin Clark is playing like a top 10 player in the WNBA right now. Aaliyah Boston has played like an all-star. Kelsey Mitchell has been very good and will be headed to her 2nd all-star game. So I think if you're riding the trend lines, even with Wednesday's disappointing setback, I think you have to like where the Fever are. But these next 3 games, could determine a lot into that, these next 3 games coming into the Olympic break.
Pat, in terms of Caitlin Clark's play and now starting to play like a top 10 player, as you said, if you had to pinpoint one of these two, would you say from beginning of season to now that Caitlin Clark is playing with more confidence, or would you say that Caitlin Clark simply avoided allowing frustration to take over while she was learning the process?
Yeah, I think both of those are probably true. I would lean toward just playing with more confidence, and it's something that she's never lacked, but at the same time, you can't force it necessarily until you start to have some of those successes. And I think a lot of it is just her general intelligence of the game and how she's adjusted to maybe kind of an X's and O's battle. I think about the beginning of the year and how she would be face guarded 35 feet away from the hoop, and sometimes teams would have success in taking her out of the game. And you watch games like the one against New York on Saturday. Well, that's the same Benaja Laney who was guarding her that way at the beginning of the season. but she was fantastic this time against the Liberty. And I think it's kind of her figuring out, okay, I've always been the center of attention, but that's different in the WNBA when you're playing with the top 144 women versus in college basketball. We all know the Big Ten product's good, but it certainly ramps up a level or two in the WNBA. And it's really just struck me watching her during this recent stretch how, look, she's going to have an off game again, but it's been a long time now since you've left the game going, man, Caitlin Clark didn't maybe play close to the best of her ability. She's just been consistently really, really good. And I think a higher level of confidence, kind of figuring out exactly how her game works at its best at this level, which is different than in the collegiate level. But the skill set clearly translates. I mean, she had the triple-double against New York, the first ever as a rookie. She's had double-digit assists here for 4 consecutive games. The league record is 6 all time, so that's something to watch there too. But it's clear that she is playing I don't know if I want to say quite the confidence level as Iowa, because that was historically maybe best of all time good. But to me, it seems like she's getting pretty close to that level, playing with that kind of confidence. And if you look at the comeback that the Fever had, albeit it fell short in the fourth quarter on Wednesday, I mean, she was dominant. She was knocking down the three. She was getting to the rim. She was getting to the foul line. She was setting up her teammates. She had another 13-assist game, which matches the franchise record again. Every aspect of her game was working at a very, very high level on Wednesday, and frankly, it has been here for the last few weeks.
Pat Boylan is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Pat, in terms of the lineup, I saw Christy Sides catching heat's probably the wrong word, but there was a lot of question about whether or not the Fever are kind of in the if it ain't broke, don't fix it category of lineup changes. Are we going to see a continued tweak, if you will, of the starting lineup, or do they go back to what was working when they really started to find their footing?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and I don't want to speak for her, and guessing can be a bit of a challenge too. But in general, I tend to think Melissa Smith came in, I thought played a pretty good game. I thought was pretty impactful on Wednesday. They started the second half with Smith back on the floor. So if I had to guess, I would guess that I've been calling them core four: Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Melissa Smith. I would guess that grouping of players continues to get starters minutes. It did get a lot of attention, and maybe deservedly so. At the end of the day, she still played Melissa Smith 27 minutes, which is about what she's averaging on the season. So she still got in the game about as much as she always has been. And I think some of that, too, was to give Lexi Hull some opportunity, because if there's one player that's, been really trending in the right direction lately, comparative to the beginning of the season, it is probably her. And I think they've maybe found something, a role, or just some confidence from Hull as well that they want to try to find some more minutes for. So I tend to think you're going to see those four. I think where it becomes really interesting is who is that fifth player, because it seems to me like they've got three players that could fill that role for the starting lineup. It's been Katie Lou Samuelson the last couple of games. She's the best pure shooter. Christy Wallace is going to be representing Team Australia at the Olympics. She's one of those do a little bit of everything type players. And Lexi Hull, when she's on the top of her game and playing like this, is a pretty good 3-and-D player. She's a good shooter and a really good defender as well. And we saw her with impactful moments in the fourth quarter against New York. And then the fourth quarter against Washington, it was really Lexi Hull defensively and Caitlin Clark offensively that brought them back. So I would expect a significant role for Lexi Hull, whether it's technically in the starting lineup or not, I'm not sure. But that final starting spot between those three players is maybe the most interesting storyline to watch here going forward, and I'll be curious to see how Christy handles it here tonight.
Pat Boylan is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Pat, this one's more just about the support the Fever have received and the team itself. At this point, maybe I shouldn't be surprised in general when it's sellout capacity crowd, but we had some of it on the TVs here in the studio. That type of sellout crowd looked like a Pacers playoff game for noon on a Wednesday was insane to just the bystander viewer in me. For you that follows this team, that covers it, that is the TV voice of it, Is it normal now, or is it still just incredible to see that level of capacity crowd for that type of specific example noon on a Wednesday during the summer?
It's stunning. It's remarkable. This is the 10th season I've had the good fortune of calling games for the Fever. I started right at the tail end of Tamika Catchings' run. The crowds were good there. Catchings is as good of an on-the-floor player all-around game as the WNBA has ever seen. They hung a championship banner, a couple more conference championship banners. The success level of that run is clearly noted among some of the best in WNBA history. The Fever then went through, a significant down period where getting a handful of 1,000 people in the building was a really good result. And for this to just happen almost seemingly overnight, I mean, last year I think the attendance numbers were a little over 4,000, and this season it's every single game. They've had a couple that aren't technically sellouts, but even those have had 15 and 16,000 people in there. To have a Wednesday noon game, now this is something that the league does. They want each team to have a kids' day game and sell tickets to camps, and it's nothing new. But for your average person to have tickets, if you're a season ticket holder and you've got tickets to all 20 games, well, you could see why Wednesday at noon during the middle of the work week would be a tough one to come to. And I don't know exactly how all that plays out, but to watch a game like Wednesday, as full as it was, I mean, it felt like, a Saturday afternoon based on the buildings, how many people were in there and just kind of the aura around the building. Look, I found myself just scraping my jaw off the floor numerous times. And I say the same thing you said, man, this has to stop surprising me at the level that it is, but it's still so stunning. It's so cool. That moment before the game begins, after the anthem, when they're doing the lineups. And if the people in the stands weren't wearing red and blue and Iowa Hawkeye yellow and black, you otherwise couldn't determine it, as you say, any different from most of the Pacers season, a Pacers playoff game, or anything like that. And for this franchise to have that, it's just so cool. It's so cool to sit there and look in the upper corners of Gainbridge Fieldhouse and not be able to find a seat. And a lot of people wondered, would some of that initial hysteria or hype die off? Well, we still are relatively early into it, understood, but we're more than halfway through the season, and there just seems to be no momentum lost, and if anything, maybe only gained in terms of the fan interest and all of that. And so it's one of the great storylines, I think, in all of sports, and certainly in this city. When you consider where the Fever have been the last few years, and then all of a sudden they've got, according to ESPN, the fourth biggest sports star in America, and they're packing that building every single night, and it will be tonight, by the way, fully expect to sell out tonight as well. It's one of the great stories, I think, that we've seen here in this city in quite some time and probably in its history, its sporting history.
Pat, in terms of Pacers Summer League, it is the biggest summer league for which player?
Oh, maybe Jarris Walker. And I don't know that necessarily if he has a poor summer league or anything like that, it's any sort of indictment on his ability to be a regular in this rotation. But if you think about last year, he's somebody that drew a ton of praise from what the coaches saw in practice and what the coaches saw in the G League, and the team was deep and they didn't have a ton of minutes to give to him during the regular season. And he seems like somebody that really could use and benefit from a good summer league here. So there's a couple of guys, like Ben Shepherd is on the roster too. How much he plays into it, how much Walker plays, sometimes those guys that aren't rookies don't play in the entire summer league, but that's probably who I'm watching the most closely. And then of course, the kid out of Kansas, the rookie, I'm watching him closely as well. But I'll be interested to see what Jarris Walker looks like, because I think you would like to see a player that comes in with a year of experience and in a platform like this, I don't know necessarily dominates the right word, but really start to impose his will and show a lot of those things that the coaching staff has seen behind closed doors.
Yeah, I think at the very least you would like to have it where if you were to take somebody in that was not familiar with it and say, okay, one of these guys was a lottery pick, which one is it? You would hope that they would be able to say, well, it's that guy right there, clearly, right? But in terms of Walker, but we'll see what does happen. Pat Boylan will be on the call again. Fever and Mercury, that's 7:30 tonight, right? 7:30 start?
7:30. We are on Ion, so this is a national telecast. It'll be myself, Bria Goss will be on the call, Kelsey Casper, our normal sideline reporter, and then the rest of it is the Ion crew. So it's the Ion Friday night WNBA game. It's the first Fever home game here on a Friday night this year.
We'll have eyes on it. See what I did there, Jimmy? You like that?
Well done.
You got that? Okay. Pat, we appreciate it. Have a good weekend, all right?
Appreciate it as well, guys. Take care.
All right, Pat Boylan on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. I'll be curious to see with Jarris Walker. The Pacers, again, have been very steadfast in their support that this guy is going to be a player for them. I'm not saying he's not, but the time is probably now when you want to start seeing some of that. And I realize Summer League is Summer League.
Yeah, I mean, you'd want to see a similar output to what you saw from Andrew Nembhard and Benedict Mathurin last year in this same circumstance. I know that playing time was different for both of them the year before than it was Jarris Walker in a clear logjam for this lineup. But for Walker, I imagine this being a brief stint, maybe a couple games in Summer League. I don't imagine him being involved heavily when they get to like the consolation rounds and the tournament aspect of it. But the bigger step for him is this being a jumping off point for a strong year two, where without Jalen Smith on the roster, with minutes potentially up for grabs for him, is he able to have the larger role that's carved out? Because right now, I don't think you can clearly say from his rookie season, based on a very small sample size, what type of player he's going to be it good or bad. It's incomplete. That would be the grade I would give there.
Eddie, are you writing a book? Eddie
Why?
Garrison's, what's that?
Why do you ask?
He's talking about the clicky clack on the keyboard.
Well, I just noticed you're feverishly working on something. You look very intent. I thought, are you looking for drywall folks to help me out with my closet situation?
No.
He's putting out invoices.
No.
Yeah. Are you? Somebody told me $500 it cost him to get a doggy door removed and filled back in.
Your best bet is probably buying the materials yourself and then hiring somebody to do it, because it'll save you money on that part of it. So.
Did they want to keep the doggy door, or did they just want to make it a real door?
I think
What's
they had
the
a
story
doggy door that they wanted to then turn in just a regular wall.
Okay, all right. It wasn't a sentimental type deal like yours.
No, they were filling in the doggy door. Now, on this particular, how you go into like a bar and they have a part of like the basketball floor on the wall?
Yep.
Sure.
So can I get a part of my old wall on my wall? Would that look weird if you come in and that's
what I was saying.
Eddie suggested that early on.
Yeah. What are we doing here?
No, wait a minute. So you're saying take the wall. I'm not saying put it into the wall.
Okay, that's what Eddie was saying you could do.
Oh.
Yeah, not put it into the wall, but have it
redact.
Coat it over and then
retract.
Like hanging on the wall.
Sure.
If you will.
I know what you're saying.
Like any piece of memorabilia at a sports bar, like you mentioned.
Correct.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure that's possible.
For
the
those
possibilities are endless.
For those
once
that are
extraction
just
happens.
joining us, by the way, we're talking about the fact that my parents are, after 40, I've got to think here, 46 years? After 46 years, they're moving out of the house that I grew up in. And my large bedroom closet, the wall of it, a large portion of the wall is inscribed between myself, and I'm not kidding you, I'll bet you 12 to 15 different guys over the years. We worked on our autograph on the wall. We wrote down sports teams we liked or didn't like. Notably, and the biggest one would be every girl that we had a crush on over the years. If there is anybody listening who knows any of the girls that I grew up with, the females that I grew up with, their name is probably written in the wall somewhere. Literally from 1979 to 1995, probably. So close to 20 years worth of stuff.
Obviously, just make sure you get that done before the house goes on the market.
You mean before it's sold, or
Hey, you know what, Jake?
No, before it goes on the market.
I think that's a terrible idea. I think while the house is being shown, you should be in the closet chiseling away, trying to take the wall out.
I would think that well, you're right.
That's what he was saying there. Yeah, don't do it while the house is trying to be sold.
No, you have to do it before the house is on the market.
I understand.
I don't know.
The
I think it
legalese
might
you're
increase
getting
the
into.
value of the home, though, if people know that there's a chance that what they're buying is the evolution of my autograph, right?
Well,
And they're like,
if
wow.
there are numbers on that wall, then
Think about this.
Have you thought about calling the Smithsonian?
That's what I mean. Again, my only complaint here, I realize people are telling me, like, I could buy the house. Okay, fine. But my only thing is we were getting close to, like historical marker. I mean, and the neighbors on the street, I get they probably didn't want a lot of street traffic.
Do you know
that
how?
kind of thing.
Can I wait? I don't want to jump in, but I do because this is too good not to. Imagine it becomes a historical marker, right? And then you sell it, and it's purchased by one of those old people that hate people coming to go visit things, and it's in turn a perfect encapsulation of your life as an adventurer going to see monuments like that.
Yes, like the people that were so upset about
the Breaking Bad house.
The number of times that I've gone past houses because I'm like, do you realize what happened here?
Imagine if you and Shannon ever tie the knot and you two have to live together like full time. What she would do if you pass with this said piece of your wall.
What do you mean if I bring it with me?
You don't think she'd keep it? Are you saying like in the event of Jake's untimely demise, what she does with the wall? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying if Jake were to pass before Shannon and this piece of the wall from his childhood home is around in their
goes with me.
Humble abode.
It goes with me.
Ooh.
It goes in the casket with you?
No,
of course.
Better.
Will it fit?
It depends on whether the State Museum wants it at that point. I mean, if the State Museum wants it, that's.
You chisel away part of the coffin and replace it with the wall, and so it's forever a part of that.
More scratch marks,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Jake, I wonder whose name is on that wall the most. There's a lot. I mean, I'm telling you, it is a piece of Northside Indianapolis history on there.
Yeah.
Because of the number of people that have signed it. And we dated it, too. I mean, like, we put down, like, I love so-and-so, and then with the date. I've got a couple of the girls' names that probably are on there a lot because
Did any of the girls sign the wall?
Yes.
Okay.
One of them, are you ready for this?
Sure.
One of them, a girl that I had a crush on for a very long time, without me knowing it, signed the wall. I saw it like years later, literally, I don't know, probably 5 years ago. I was in there and I'm looking at it. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I call her. I mean, we're still good friends to this day, but I call her on the phone and I'm like, what is this? What is this? Like, you signed my wall. And this was like in our like college years, right? And I'm like, you signed the wall and never told me? And she said, well, I confided to so-and-so, one of our guy friends. I'll just say, she goes, I told Brad Washburn. I told Brad Washburn that I had a huge crush on you. So I called Brad Washburn. I'm like, dude. And he goes, well, she told me not to say anything. What? Are you kidding me? What sort of guy code manual did you get growing up?
What are we doing?
I mean, come on. So, yes, there are girls that sign the wall, including one confessing their crush to me.
Man.
I mean, there's a bumper sticker, an I Love WIBC bumper sticker from when I was probably 10.
I don't think
that they were handing out like in the mall.
I don't think this should be kept to just one portion of the state of Indiana. This needs to be a whole tour, like a traveling aspect of it.
I'm telling you. The neighbors probably don't like a lot of traffic. Tom across the street, though, listen to the show. Every time I see him, he's like Shannon, though. Every time I see him, he wants to talk about J&V. Every time I go over to my parents' house and he comes across the street, he's like, J&V was talking about this yesterday, and J&V was talking about that. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm on right before him. You are? Yeah. You want to come see the wall? See, it'd be easier if it were a brick wall, because then I could just have like a
Yeah.
mason come in and take that part out, right? I'll have to look and tabulate on who has the most representation amongst the names that are. It might be one of my buddies that signed it the most. I don't know. On the wall. Eddie, you have a moral dilemma tonight in the world of sports, correct?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do.
Jimmy, would you like to explain for the listening audience why our friend Eduardo Eddie Garrison here is going to have mixed emotions with tonight's baseball game?
Well,
Why
so
must we do this?
Eddie is a diehard Reds fan, and he's shared with us that he's going to the Reds game, which is awesome. Anytime you get out to Great American, that's great. But when the baseball season started, or just before it started, I should say, we did our beer bet draft, a continuation from our NHL draft, which is double or nothing, as we established early on.
We established after the beer bet was made, but that's
we
neither
did, but
here
we
nor
agreed.
there.
We agreed upon
Money,
the show.
of course, you guys would.
Well, that's because we'll get to why we would here in a second. So we all made our selections. Eddie had the first pick, but we'll save that for a minute. Then Jake took the Milwaukee Brewers, and I took the Cleveland Guardians, and that's been great for us. The Guardians 57-35 as it stands. The Brewers 54-40. So nice little race between myself and Jake. And then you look to see Eddie's Marlins, that first overall, 32-61. So that's where Eddie is, and they happen to be in Cincinnati against the Reds. So perhaps this is the turning point of the beer bet for Eddie tonight, if the Marlins are able to take one and then two and then maybe three from the Reds. So a dilemma here. Who are you pulling for?
How far back is Eddie, though, in our race for the beer? This might have already kind of settled itself, right?
Probably the size of my head at this point.
Eddie is 26 back on the loss side to the Guardians, and he is 21 back on the loss side
Eddie,
to you and the Brewers.
You had the first pick in this game that we came up with.
Yep.
Just out of curiosity, because of the three of us, you follow baseball more closely than anyone.
No doubt.
Indeed.
Were you overthinking this? What possibly led you to go with the Marlins?
So they just missed the playoffs a season ago in the first year of Skip Schumacher as their manager. I was like, you know what? They should be able to build off of what they did last year. They brought in Tim Anderson. They brought in a couple other notable arms in the bullpen because that was a big struggle for them last year. I had Luis Ariz in the outfield, Jazz Chisholm, or in the infield, and Jazz Chisholm. He's a good player. I thought he would develop and stay healthy this year, which he has. And the pitching staff has not been good. They've dealt with a mirage of injuries. And
a barrage.
Yes, thank you. I was going to gloss over the fact that
It's all right.
butchered that. Anyway, and their best pitcher, who was a Cy Young Award winner, Sandy Alcantara, they announced that he will no longer be pitching this year and not making an appearance. So, yeah.
Is that because he's hurt or because he sucks?
Hurt.
Yeah.
So I maybe thought he was just a barrage, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, so that was a wise decision by you, though.
It was well thought out.
And Jimmy even said,
I have said this. I will acknowledge. I said that if I would have had the first pick, my two top choices, the Guardians were not on my list. It was the Marlins and the Brewers. Those are the two teams that I wanted. So I could laugh at Eddie now because he is the victim of it, but it very easily could have been me.
Baseball is kind of unpredictable in Eddie's defense.
I mean, look at the Kansas City Royals. They were one of the worst teams last year. Now they're over 500 and they're competing for a playoff spot right now.
The All-Star Game starters have been announced, correct? From a pitching standpoint?
The National League, yeah. I have not seen
Who is the National League starting pitcher in the All-Star Game?
That would be one Paul Skeens.
Where did he begin his season?
Right here in the Circle City with the Tribe.
Victory Field.
By principle, I'm supposed to root against the Pittsburgh Pirates now. By principle.
Well, you should anyway. You're a Reds fan, right?
Correct, but for this reason, based on above the other reasons. I mean, they're affiliated with the Indians, so I guess I kind of have to like that.
Is the principle because they stole Paul Skeens or because of your Reds fandom and it being the Pirates?
Would you like to guess the principle by which I've
just made my guess.
The precedent is there.
Okay. Eddie, do you have a guess? I've made mine.
No.
Okay. Years ago, a pitcher with this level of phenom in terms of coming in, I mean, there are always pitchers that come in and right out of the box, you're like, oh my goodness. Fernando Valenzuela is the first that comes to mind. with Fernando Mania in his rookie year, and it just takes everybody by storm. And Paul Skeens and what he's doing is remarkable. Steven Strasburg is one with the Washington Nationals. And I remember when Strasburg was a rookie, and the Nationals were right there within sniffing. It was like they were having this great year, and they're heading into the postseason, and they announced, that's it, we're shutting him down. We're preserving him long term. And right then I made this declaration of, if you have that kind of an arrogance that it's just a foregone conclusion that you're going to be in the playoffs or making runs to the World Series every single year in this guy's career, baseball guarantees nothing, especially when it comes to pitchers. It guarantees nothing. Now, Paul Skeens last night goes out, throws 99 pitches, has a no-hitter through 7. He's 6 outs away from a no-hitter.
Yep. He threw 6 pitches in the 7th inning.
Jake Query would still be at that game.
And they pull him. You owe it to the pitcher, and you owe it to the fans, and you owe it to your franchise. This, if I'm not mistaken, is the second time this year now that he's had a no-no through 7 and not finished the game. Nolan Ryan, the only other pitcher to have no-hitters go 7 innings deep into a season and leave the game.
Didn't the Dodgers do this a couple years ago with Kershaw?
Yes. It was the first game of the year, I think, or his first start of the year or something, and that happened. I think it was last season.
Think about this. They would be doing themselves a service by letting him finish and get the no-hitter right out of the box. So the rest of his career, it's not weighing into his mind every time he goes into 7 with a no-hitter going.
I was watching that game, and they cut to him going into the dugout after completing the 7th inning, and he's getting all these handshakes, and the manager, Derek Shelton, tells him, hey, you're not going out there for the 8th. And he is pissed. Like, he is visibly upset. And I'm like, oh, boy.
So on principle alone, I can't root for Pittsburgh because there's an arrogance there of just, well, you know what, like he's going to have plenty more opportunity to do this. And he probably will. The guy's a phenom, no question about it. One of the things with pitchers, though, to me, that you can clearly this guy is mega, mega talented. But a lot of times you can see pitchers that start out earlier in their career and are unbelievable. And then, I mean, I was there. Look. I covered Ricky Ankiel. I was there when Ricky Ankiel imploded. And then all of a sudden, this guy went from being a phenom that Tony La Russa started in the first game of the playoffs, and the yips happened, and he never came back. Now, to his credit, he returned and became a good outfielder in Major League Baseball. But Matt Morris was on that staff, and those are two guys that were virtually unhittable at different periods. But once people figure out and batters figure out, you got to go through a couple of cycles before you truly can gauge a guy's. And there's no doubt this guy is a phenom. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Oh, he is the real deal.
He is, no question. But you have to, and there's a reason he was the number 1 overall pick in the draft, right? But you owe it to not only him but everybody else involved. What is the point here? They're saving his arm. He's 22 years old. He's on a pitch count. He had 99 pitches.
Is this a product of arrogance, like you're outlining, which is that, oh, look how talented he is, number 1 overall pick, just dominating on a nightly basis. He's always going to have opportunities. Now is not the time for that. Is it a level of arrogance, or is it just another example of organizations, right or wrong, viewing pitchers in a different way they did 20 years ago?
It's the latter for sure.
So like I'm always torn on this. Like if this is weird because I know no hitters matter, and Jake, this goes against a core belief of yours because you love when an opportunity to see something like that. You might be a once in a lifetime chance to see a no hitter, let alone a perfect game in person. I tend to side with you guys when it's a perfect game. Maybe it's just generational. Maybe it's me not being as diehard baseball as Eddie is. When it's a no-hitter, I tend to be like, okay, keep it moving. That's your choice. Fine. Move along.
I was kind of surprised they pulled him, but at the same time, I wasn't surprised because after the game, the Pirates manager was like, Yeah, you didn't see it in terms of velocity that I was tired, but I could see it in his face and I could see it in his eyes that he was getting tired. I was like, really? You're going to pull that card?
I'd rather them show me the data if you're going to tell me that. Show me that his velocity's dipping like by pitch.
Well, it wasn't.
Well, so that's my
what
point,
I'm
though.
saying.
But that's why I don't like that.
He threw 99 pitches.
Right?
The other part of it, too, is
back in my day, guys, 160 pitches.
the meat of the order was coming up for Milwaukee. It was 3, 4, and 5 due up in the 8th inning, starting with Yelich, Christian Yelich.
Again, that's
former MVP.
That's not why I justify it. I don't even know if I justify it. I'm indifferent because I'm so used to it now. Once you see high-profile pitchers, again, it happened with Kershaw, like I mentioned a couple years ago. It's just the way the league has shifted. And it bothers people because you're used to seeing starters go complete games on a nightly basis, and teams just don't view it that way anymore.
Here's the other thing, and I get it. It's a divisional game. What are they, like 6.5 behind Milwaukee? Something like that?
Maybe 7.5, 8, maybe.
But I mean, you got a no going, man.
8.5.
Yeah, come on.
My allegiance to that is when it's a perfect game. If it's a no-hitter, because I've seen this same controversial thing play out time and time again over the last 5 years. I'm numb to it. Perfect game, okay, I'll get the pitchforks out. No-hitter, seen that same movie before.
Here's a good question. Jake, is it possible that there was a bonus in his contract for a no-hitter? The Pirates are notoriously cheap.
I hope that's true.
Did the call come from above to the dugout?
Did the call come from inside the house? I hope so. I really hope that's true.
Can you imagine that? I'd be livid if I were him. Baseball is totally unguaranteed.
I get it. I get why he's upset. I think he's well within his right to be upset. I've seen this movie before. You see it a couple times every season or maybe a couple times every year where it's like, okay, guy's got a no-hitter through 5, no-hitter through 6. Okay, let's head it over to Ralph in the bullpen. Like, it's just the way it goes nowadays. It's frustrating. I get the frustration, especially for baseball purists, because it's something that used to really matter to teams and to players 5 years ago, and it just doesn't anymore.
I'm now at the age where my, I don't give a blank factor is way higher, right?
Sure.
So if I'm at a game and a guy's got a no through 7 and with 99 pitches and they pull him, I'm throwing stuff on the field. I might streak.
You can throw it over the net?
I might be the guy that runs out onto the field and is like, I just enough. I'm not Michael Douglas falling down level, but it's close, right? I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'll spend the night in the clink to make my point. I want to see a no-no. My goal in life at some point is to see a no-hitter. Get a foul ball, be cool, but see a no-hitter? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Hell, I had a chance to see an immaculate inning, and apparently I left early on that, so let's go. So I guess, maybe I'm the one. You can't predict that, though. A no-hitter, a guy's got a no-hitter through 7 with 99 pitches, and he's the starter in the All-Star game. You're like, the odds are in the favor that he is going to get it done for the last 6 outs.
I also infuriated you. I think Eddie did as well with a similar conversation about how if it's a perfect game, I'm willing to take off the hat and root for the perfect game. But
you
if
have to.
But the part you got really mad at us about was if it's the no-hitter, I'm like,
you're a communist. Or a Yankees fan. Or a Cardinals fan, because they're the smartest fans in baseball.
I'm not one of them.
Okay, now the word comes down that apparently this is a matter of whether it's a drywall or plaster wall. It's not it is somebody's. It is not a wall that would have any sort of piping or wiring in it because it is strictly between the closet and the bedroom. So I think in that regard, I'm safe. And I can assure you there's probably no money hidden inside the wall. I'm telling you, this is now a mission for me to get this done.
Did you say probably?
What's that?
There's probably no money inside the wall?
I don't know who. My mom says it is drywall. I don't know who owned the house before well, I do know who owned the house before my parents, but I can't imagine that they would have hidden money in the wall itself. But my mom claims that it's drywall, and apparently that makes it even more difficult. This from legendary Derek Thomas of the News, Channel 6, says, baseball's killing its magic. A no-hitter may have cemented thousands of lifetime ticket-buying, television viewing fans. I agree. I'm telling you.
There's a lot of issues wrong with the sport. I mean, it's...
Don't get me started.
I don't think that... And this... Look, I do love baseball. Not as much as Eddie, but I do love baseball. But, like, it's... The idea of a 9-inning... Something that you would have to have the attention span of today's generation for 9 consecutive innings being something that latches on to a younger generation of fans for life being the sole turning point.
That's it. They pulled Skeens because he's still young enough that his attention span's only 7 innings and not 9. Tony East joins us next.
Pacers Summer League in Las Vegas begins tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, as they take on Jake's favorites, the Brooklyn Nets.
Thank you.
One of our favorites is out in Las Vegas right now, and I know he's on the job and is working hard, but I certainly hope he'll make time to have a double-double for me at the In-N-Out on the Las Vegas Strip. He is Tony East of Locked On Pacers. You can follow him on Twitter at Tony R. East. Tony, regardless of if you're willing to let me live vicariously through you for the culinary delight that is In-N-Out, you're at least letting me live vicariously with you at one of my favorite spots, Thomas and Mack Center. Of course, the Pacers will be in Cox Pavilion tonight. Let's get right into it. For the Pacers in Summer League, one of my most pressing questions is, how do some of the second-year players that are on this roster compare in terms of playing time that is allowed to what Benedict Mathurin and Andrew Nembhard had a year ago? Are we expecting, for the likes of Ben Sheppard and Jarris Walker, a short 1 to 2 game stint, or do you expect them being involved throughout the duration of this 2 weeks long affair?
I think Sheppard certainly will not play very much out here. I mean, what does he really have to prove, at this stage of basketball? He was starting conference finals games like 40 days ago, and now he's playing Summer League. I can't imagine there's very many guys who have done that duo in their career, so I can't imagine he plays much. Jarris may be the same thing. We've seen returning players, Duarte, O'Shea Brissett, to name a few, not play very much either, but Jarris certainly has a lot of intrigue about what he could do out here. Rick Carlisle on the morning show on this very station talking earlier this week about a lot of that stuff he hopes to see from Jarris in these summer sessions. And, for a lot of the returning guys, for me in Summer League, I'm watching what new skills are they showing, what are they adding to their game that can augur potentially something more when the regular season starts or in actual games. And for Jarris, that could be a number of things, and so maybe he ends up playing 3-4 games. I very much doubt he'll play all 5. But certainly for him, it's a little different than Sheppard, who clearly established what he can do in the pros. Jarris still looking to add to some of that stuff, and so maybe he plays a little more, but if he comes out and just dominates these first 2 games, maybe that's all he plays.
In terms of, let's go kind of player by player here, Tony. Jarris Walker, and what I'm going to ask you is I'm going to give you the name of a player, and you tell me what you believe it is the Pacers want to see the player showcasing improvement in, or the role that is seen for them in Summer League that would say, okay, that's what we're wanting to see, that we're going to need to see at the full NBA level. So we'll begin with Jarris Walker.
Yeah, physicality and rebounding. And I am saying that I think the Pacers want to see that because that's what Rick Carlisle said, but also because it's largely true, right? A lot of his weaknesses last year defensively were kind of floaty and gambling, and just, his instincts are very good, and he's a good playmaker on that end. Even in Summer League last year, we saw some of that stuff, but just constant, I'm stronger than you, I'm faster than you kind of plays on defense, and really hitting the glass, because that's an element they'll need. In fact, those 2 skills are what they've kind of identified as what the team primarily needs going forward, to take another step. And so if he could do those things and show that maybe that is something that could translate to the regular season, you'd never know at Summer League. But I think that would be very important for him, because his shot was better than I thought it would be last year. He worked on it all the time. He's got such natural gifts, right? He's such a smart player, but putting that all together and doing it for a full 40 minutes, out-conditioning their opponent, I think that'd be a huge summer for Jarris.
Okay, the next then would be Ben Sheppard.
You know what I asked him about when we talked to him at a Summer League practice, and I'm curious if you agree, but his skill set is not the type that will pop or shine in Summer League, right? Even last year as a 22-year-old first-round pick, he averaged 9.5 points a game, and he shot it pretty well, and he defended fine. There were signs that he was going to be fine as a pro, but nothing about what he does is he's going to be beating guys off the dribble or stripping guys on the perimeter. He'll be very solid and help everybody else and provide some spacing, but I don't really know what he'll look like in this summer setting. So I think for him, it's just going to be heady, smart plays, right? Does he actually try to expand his game a little bit? Because to his credit, a lot of times last year, he played a very low mistake, safe style of play, right? Not a lot of turnovers, never takes contested shots, fought like heck on defense. Can he force one up in a meaningful way that actually makes sense, and prove he can make harder threes, or does his passing look a little better, right? All that kind of stuff. But I think we already kind of know what Ben Sheppard is. It's just, how does it look in this kind of setting?
Johnny Furphy.
Well, that's an interesting one. You say, what does he need to add? And I don't know what he has right now. I've never seen him in a Pacers setting, in an NBA setting. So for him, I think they want to see what he is, what he can be against actual opponents with a scouting report, all that kind of stuff. I mean, the most important thing for him's got to be the jumper, right? If he, just given his size, if he can shoot it, that's an extremely valuable type of player to have. The comp that General Pargo made, at least from an aesthetic perspective, I'm not saying that he said this is going to be the type of player he is, was Larry Markkinen. When I kind of dive into some stats, it looks like a good real comp of like skills is Corey Kispert with the Wizards, if he can kind of pan out as a shooter type. So making threes would be, of course, meaningful. I want to see how Furby holds up defensively, because I think a big thing for his trajectory will, of course, be that. And everybody who's talked about him says, yeah, he's got to get stronger, right? He's got to bulk up. And so what is his baseline of defense at his current level of strength? Can he actually slide his feet and stay in front of guys? Is he contesting guys, or is he just totally a revolving door or not strong enough to force any misses? Because that will say a lot about what he'll need to work on this year, what kind of stuff he'll be putting his effort into between the Pacers and Matt Ince.
Tony, from the standpoint of minutes and availability moving forward for the Pacers next season, this somewhat goes to Summer League and what you're observing, but also what was present on the roster last year. Jarace Walker, it was well documented that there wasn't a ton of playing time available to him. You could also say perhaps his skill set, his play capability wasn't ready for a spot in the rotation. Either one of those that you want to pick, both were factors at times throughout last season. But going into this season, it would be apparent, at least some of the messaging that the Pacers are sending out there, that there's a bigger role for the taking for him if he's able to seize it and show that he's worthy of it. Where, if he is a recipient of more minutes next season, do you expect that to be? Who do you expect to be the victim of that minutes redistribution if Jarace Walker is getting more minutes next year?
Yeah, I have no – this is a bad answer for radio. I have no idea, right, because there's not a good answer, right? And so I'll give you my pitch on why he'll play more this year, and then I'll try to answer the question right. My pitch for why he'll play more is everybody who was between him and the rotation from last year is gone, right? Bruce Brown's gone, Buddy Hield's gone, Doug McDermott's gone, Jordan Wara is gone, right? So their rotation's still the same, or primarily the same. But now any injury, you could argue any injury at any position, Jarace Walker's now playing, right? If a point guard gets hurt, they just swap out how they're playing Nembhard and Halliburton, and in comes Jarace, and they move positions around. 2 through 4 is very easy. Shepard can move down. Other guys can move up. Walker can slide in at the 3 or 4. 3 or 4, obviously, he can play both of those. And even at the 5, you could say they push Obi Toppin up, in comes Jarace Walker. So it's very easy for me to say, just looking at that part of it, right, where there's less blockers, air quotes, between him and the rotation, that he'll just play more. There's going to be tons of injuries. There is every season for every team. So he'll play more games by default with that. If he is a nightly rotation player because he earned the minutes next year, I have no clue who they kick out to make it happen, because their second unit, projected right now at least, if their starters the same, would be T.J. McConnell, who was a brilliant isolation scorer and passer last year. You can't really kick him out of that unit. Ben Mathurin, who's another important young guy that, his ceiling, like Walker, could be high enough that you can't pull him out. Ben Shepard, who was rock solid in the postseason rotation last year. You're really going to pull out a first-round pick who's in your playoff rotation? Obi Toppin, who they just re-signed, and Isaiah Jackson as your backup 5, which I think if you made me pick an answer, I would say Obi Toppin becomes the backup 5 and Jarace is then playing, and Isaiah Jackson would be the loser if Jarace earns minutes, but that's still like small and challenging to deal with. So it's really hard to pick out a good answer. But if he's so good that you feel like you have to do it, I think you just have to make that tough decision as the Pacers.
What do you make of like Ben Shepard and his? I'm just assuming here. Tony East is our guest, by the way, on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. Are you going through a car wash there, or what's everything okay?
Oh, did you hear that go off? That's my AC unit in my hotel room. It is so loud. It's unbelievable.
No, you're in the hotel in Vegas at Summer League, right?
Yes. And I have to be inside because it's 1 trillion degrees here.
On or off strip?
I am off the strip. I'm right by the arena for this one.
Okay. So what do you think? I'm assuming, Tony, that Ben Shepard probably midway through the year was thinking to himself, man, the beauty of me all of a sudden being in rotation here is I'm not going to have to do Summer League. What do you think the mental aspect of it is?
I don't really know. I mean, even last year, like Andrew Nembhard played Summer League. Isaiah Jackson played his 3rd year. They've had guys who have at least kind of proven it, go out and do it again. And never hurts to have young guys all play together and get the chemistry. But I don't know necessarily. Like, I wonder if I don't actually know because no one's ever said it. But I wonder how much guys view playing in summer league as like a chore. Because maybe he just wants to do it, right? Like it doesn't hurt unless he gets injured, but it's not like it's a negative thing. But that's why I brought that up at the beginning. Like last year when they were coming into summer league, even with their good guys like Isaiah, like Andrew, their season ended in April. They hadn't played in 3 months, right? Ben Shepherd played in a postseason game on May 27th, right? That's not that long ago. So I don't know how he views it, but certainly, if they're going to have the optics of everybody else they drafted in 2023 be playing in summer league, put him out there too, I guess, have him play 2 games and then pull him because there's not much for him to show, right? Like his skill set, like I said earlier, is not going to dominate in these sessions. I'm just very curious what it'll look like.
Joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line, he is Tony East, covers the Pacers for SI, and of course on the Locked On Podcast Network via Locked On Pacers. Tony, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander said the following about Andrew Nembhard in regards to what it's like playing with him as them being teammates with Team Canada. And I whipped up because of this quote something of a hot take that admittedly has flaws, but I want to read the quote first and then see your perspective on it. So the quote was, in terms of his high praise for Andrew Nembhard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander said, "It feels like he doesn't make a mistake. He finds guys, picks up full court. He's like the perfect true point guard." That's how I describe him. I agree with that summary by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I believe that Andrew Nembhard, if you're finding his natural position where he would best be benefited with a team, it's as a point guard. Unfortunately, that position's already taken with the Pacers in terms of a starting capacity. So this is where the hot take of it all is, because you could say maybe he's leading the second unit. Well, what happens to TJ McConnell then? There's so many complications for what Nembhard's role looks like next season. And the complication with my take, if you will, is the Pacers can't really move anybody unless they add real cash contracts on it, being a Miles Turner or somebody like that. They can't really trade anybody because of the way the trade rules, as you know, unfold. So Andrew Nembhard is a true point guard. That's his best spot on a roster. He, therefore, is the best candidate to be traded because I think he could excel being maybe not a star, but a starting point guard on a championship caliber team. Do you view that as crazy, or is there some logic to that?
Well, I just view it as crazy because he's good. You're not just giving up young good players because they might not be playing their natural position like we saw last year in the playoffs. Yeah, he played the 2. He still averaged, 14 a game and guarded Jalen Brunson or guarded Damian Lillard or whatever throughout the postseason. And like that's important. That all that matters a great deal. So, maybe on the Pacers he's not playing what would be considered his best role, but why should the Pacers care? Unless they can trade him for more value to their team than he's worth, I would think they'd rather trade a young, unproven guy for an established talent or, whatever and add in whatever contract you want to say, like you mentioned, at some point, because he, like you said, if maybe the complication is McConnell, but again, I'd rather bet on Nembhard being 24 and playing starting 2 and backup 1 than have to deal with that. McConnell's contract as it stands is expiring. So I would not be looking to move him. I'd be looking to extend him on the 22nd once he's legally allowed to be. If I'm the Pacers, and I get that he might not want to take that for a lot of the reasons you just laid out, but I mean, I've been super high on him for over a year on this very show, and I do get that maybe he's not playing his natural position on this Pacers team, but he's just such a useful kind of talent, with this group and in postseason settings. And maybe everybody's going to be too enchanted by those last 2 games against the Celtics. Even before that, he was having a really brilliant playoff. So I'd just be so hesitant to trade Andrew Nembhard if I was the Pacers, and anyone really who provides them with defense. And it would take a lot for me to do that if I'm the Pacers, even knowing that his contractual future is kind of hazy.
To be clear, I agree with you on all points of how valuable he is. That's part of the reason that I think he would be a well-coveted gem if you were to put him on the trade market.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not saying do that now. I'm looking at the tough financial decision you're going to have to make a year from now. And also, in this scenario, I am playing out the idea that Benedict Mathurin becomes the player that the Pacers are going, or that they believe that he is, which is part of a starting rotation at some point and being a valuable co-star to Tyrese Halliburton. There's going to be moments where then you have to shuffle the lineup, Tony, as you know, and it's either, in all likelihood, Neesmith or Nembhard that then gets shifted to the second unit. I mean, it's a fascinating conversation and a great problem for the Pacers to have, but at some point, roles and humble pie is going to have to be accepted by somebody as being the leader of the sixth man group or the leader of the second unit as a sixth man post McConnell. And somebody, I would think, because we're all human, is going to be unhappy with that decision.
Yes, that is presumably possible unless this bench group keeps kicking butt. But, like, if Mathurin is truly that kind of ceiling, like, what does that look like in a lineup where Halliburton and Siakam take, 30 to 35 to 40 even shots in a game, right? What is his fit in that group versus what Nembhard's and Neesmith's currently is? Whereas if you're Mathurin and you are that player you just described with the second unit, maybe that's where you can get your 12 whatever shots in a game, even if you are a lot better this season. So, and the tricky part with Nembhard contractually is for the Pacers to get a lot of the restricted free agency or extension advantages, they probably can't really trade him this season. They'd have to trade him before the trade deadline this year. So they'd have to make that decision really soon, and I wouldn't want to do that. So they have a lot of overlapping factors contractually and from a team building perspective to figure out, because it's just so rare that a team has like absolutely no bad contracts, is really good, and is really young, right? So there's just so many overlapping things that make any reasonable trade really hard and emotional to make, but they're going to have to probably do it in the next year to 18 months, and I think how they play in the next year is going to define who it could be in those deals.
Tony, in terms of dumb questions, here's the dumbest one you're going to get in a long time.
I love that.
Any chance that Andrew Nembhard has a regression in play next year, not at his own fault, but because he is now more on the radar and teams are going to better assess and evaluate how to stop him?
I guess. What would a regression look like for him? Just like from an efficiency perspective, or
effectiveness? Yeah, I mean, maybe some of the shots he gets in the mid-range, there's better protection or better seal there.
I suppose that's possible. I'd be pretty surprised. Just like he started the season like pretty rough, right? Like he was hurt for the first 2 months of the year, but he got back for the in-season tournament. He had the knee thing happen, then his back hurt. Like I think from Christmas to the end of the season, he shot 40% from deep or something like that. So it'd be interesting. Like if he plays like he did early in the season for the whole season, I suppose that's possible. But at his age, I would be very surprised to see that happen. It's not. If he's a second-year player, I think that's more possible. That happens all the time to guys in their second seasons. Like Halliburton had that happen. Mathurin, Christian White, where they think they get it. They come in, their mentality's not right. They don't play as well. But in year three, I expect he'll take a step forward. But I suppose it's possible.
Tony, I appreciate the time. Enjoy Las Vegas. Try to stay cool. And if you get a chance, go do the Stratosphere thing and jump off the top of it and let us know how it goes. And also, if you need a burger, go to Fat Burger over In-N-Out. Fat Burger's better. In-N-Out's overrated.
I don't co-sign that.
Okay.
I have never heard of it, and I can't say I'm compelled to go to In-N-Out at all.
All right, well.
See?
That's your loss.
Smart guy. All right.
I can't wait to travel and go to fast food places. That's what I'm thinking about.
That's right.
It's a regional thing.
It is a regional thing. Out west, it's Tony East. Tony, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Tony East. By the way, he said it was a gabillion degrees in Las Vegas. It's going to be 95 for the IndyCar race on Sunday.
It's incredibly.
Des Moines.
I mean, as we know, it's always incredibly hot in Las Vegas around this time of year. But especially for summer league, you can't especially it being off strip. Like there's no shelter unless you're inside Thomas and Mack. You instantly sweat buckets when you walk out in the Vegas heat. If you're there for like a Pacers day game or whatever summer league game you're going to go see.
High of 115.
It's brutal, man.
Nah, that's not bad. No precipitation, 115. Visibility is 25 plus miles.
Wussies.
It says right here, feels like, and it says wind is making it feel cooler.
Do you want to read what the temperature is? It says it feels like?
The humidity's 12%.
I get it. That gets the debate of it's not the heat, it's the humidity. I understand, but
I mean, come on.
It's very hot. It's very hot.
I'll look up what's going on at the Iowa Speedway here, where I'm going to be on Sunday or tomorrow and Sunday. Let's see. Right now it's only 84. Not bad, right? The no precipitation, humidity 60%. That's a little rough.
Yeah.
Humidity is making it feel warmer, it says. Yes.
Wow. Hashtag analysis.
96 degrees on Sunday for the race, the day race.
So still not as hot as Las Vegas.
Yeah. Okay, would you rather have 115 dry heat or 96 with 60% humidity?
115 dry heat.
Yes. Because at least then when you sweat, it like dries immediately. You get in that humidity, and all of a sudden, like you
I'm
walk
probably
around,
gonna be
you look
seeking-
like you look like Matt Foley, motivational speaker.
I'm probably going to seek shelter either way, but I'd be feeling better about myself poolside with sunscreen at 96 than I would 115.
Poolside was not an option.
You're talking about summer activities, my man.
It was not an option.
It was an option. I made it.
No, you can't. No.
Period.
That's like on a test you're given, hey, 2 + 2.
Well, I told you I wasn't going to be outside anyway.
And you
I made
write
my
in your
choice.
own answer.
You're having a summer activity. Why are you going outside to go do something? I told you what to be doing. People aren't seeking out the Vegas pool at 115 degrees. They're staying
Ooh.
inside.
I don't know about that. You don't think right now, like around the Mandalay Bay pool, there aren't people laying around hanging out?
There's definitely people.
Usually, there's probably some people, but the big time is the night swim. That's where Vegas lives.
Yeah.
That's a great song, Night Swimming from REM. Are you familiar with that song?
I'm not.
Oh, it's a great song.
Good song.
You know that song, Eddie?
Yeah.
Holy cow, there's no way. You've never heard Hey Jude and you know Night Swimming by REM.
It's tough.
There is zero chance. I'm calling 100% bluff on that. No question about it. You cannot fool me. I realize that I'm hung up on this drywall saga, but there is no way that you know the song Night Swimming by REM.
Let me pull it up, see if we have. I'm pretty sure I have.
It's a great song. Go ahead and pull it up. It's off of
Let me dance and act like I've
Automatic
heard this
for the People,
song all
I think,
the time.
that or the next album. We got to wait. Do we have to wait through like a commercial here before you?
I'm getting to the chorus.
Well, the first word of the song is Night Swimming, so I don't think that alone illuminates that you've not heard said song. Do you have it? Now, okay.
Like I said, I was.
Now hold on. Now, keep in mind, Eddie wants to get to the chorus before he knows whether or not he knows Night Swimming.
Sure.
Now, let's wait for the first part where Michael Stipe joins it.
That's the chorus.
Okay, what did he forget? What did he forget?
Okay.
In the lyrics, what did he forget?
I couldn't tell you the lyrics. I've heard it because of the piano riff.
Let's turn the volume down a little bit if we're going to debate what the lyrical context is. All right.
The piano riff.
Whatever, Jake.
There's no way. I appreciate, Eddie. I appreciate greatly your efforts to try to acclimate
Whatever.
yourself into the old man radio segment here. But I'm saying that you've never heard Night Swimming. There are REM songs that you know.
Yep.
It's the end of the world as we know. You know
Yes.
that song,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yep. It's an Independence Day, which I watched last week because I always watch it around the 4th of July.
That movie's terrible.
Thank you.
It is it not?
I mean, it's a classic cheesy blockbuster, but it's
Independence Day is one of those movies that, admittedly, when you first saw it, it was cool. I mean,
Sure.
I enjoyed it too. And then the more that Twister falls into the same category. The more you watch it, the more you're like, this is terrible.
I realize that we can't long form on this, but like, have you seen the trailer for the new Twister? It looks like a comedy. Like, it looks so bad. I think it's coming out this weekend. They're remaking it, or I don't know if it's a sequel or what it is, but it's. And Glenn Powell, I think, is the
Wait a minute,
actor's
They're
name.
doing a new Twister?
They are doing a new Twister.
Is that
Yes.
because for some reason someone thought that
It
there
looks
needed
awful.
to be another Twister?
I guess. It looks terrible. They also remade Independence Day a couple years ago. Or they didn't remake it. They did a sequel. That was also terrible.
I thought the first one was I mean, the previews for it were cool, but it was one of those movies. Then this happens with a lot of them, maybe even with this show, where at first it's fun, and then after a while you're like, okay, enough.
It has such a good cast with it, though, that like it has endearing qualities still, Independence Day, the original. So, I don't know. It's always a 4th of July tradition for me.
By the way, update on the poll on query_company on Twitter/X. Are the ESPYs still a thing? That was the question. 60% of the votes, that's approaching 1,300, say no. 36%, were they ever? 4% yes.
Wow.
I'm telling you, there's people that probably didn't hear the opening segment, and they've said yes to it just being a thing.
Well, a thing, I think most people know that a thing, I mean, like,
Is it still something you do? Is it still something popular? Like, that's how I read a thing.
I mean, a lava lamp in your basement is a thing. It is a possession.
but is it a thing? No, it's not
Correct.
anymore. It's not a thing.
But I think most people know that when you say, like, is that a thing?
Will Smith, Bill Pullman, Jeff Goldblum, enough said.
Is it still cool is what it means.
Hip.
What was that you just read off?
Will Smith, Bill Pullman, and Jeff Goldblum, enough said. It's the 3 leads in Independence Day.
Isn't, correct me if I'm wrong here, isn't Dennis Quaid also in it?
Randy Quaid.
Or Randy Quaid,
Yes,
one of the
he
two
is.
Quaids,
Yep,
yeah.
Yep. Judd Hirsch.
Yeah,
it's
cousin
great.
Eddie's Randy Quaid, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We come back. It's a Friday. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour. You know what that means. It's a feel-good Friday, and we're not talking about the feel-good nature of the fact that my parents are finally graduating from their house and leaving behind all of my memories. No, none of that. A feel-good Friday, and I'm talking about a girl right here in Indianapolis that left the big city and went to a bigger one and made us all proud. And it's all part of an effort to get kids utilizing sports to find some ways to make learning fun. We're going to talk about exactly that and talk about somebody who went out and won a pretty darn big prize for all of us in Indianapolis. That conversation and Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday from Franciscan Health is next. Sometimes you can tell young people don't stop believing when it comes to achieving your dreams, and they got to keep going and keep going. And that's one thing that happened for a 6th grade student at IPS School 39. We will get to that as part of our Feel Good, Good for the Heart Fridays, brought to you by our friends at Franciscan Health. Keep in mind, by the way, Franciscan Health going to be sponsoring our golf outing. That's coming up this Thursday at Back 9. We will be broadcasting live from 12 until 3, so too will John. And there will also be a fundraising silent auction with great sports memorabilia and experiences, all to benefit, by the way, the Franciscan Health Foundation. Franciscan, I just had somebody tell me this week, as a matter of fact, via social media, that their dad went into the hospital to get a heart scan, got a simple $49 heart scan from Franciscan Health. And Franciscan, when it comes to the heart scan and getting your heart feeling good and making sure that you are in tip-top cardiac shape, Franciscan is the absolute place because it's the number one heart program in Indiana for cardiology by health grades, number 1 in Indiana for interventional coronary care and major cardiac surgery by Care Checks. And those $49 heart scans, which are oh so easy to do, you can find out all of the information for that at franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles. That's franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles to find out about the very fast, non-invasive heart scan for just $49 to find out about whether or not there is blockage in your heart. Jason, who sent me a tweet, said that his dad went in, got a scan, and they immediately found out he had 80% blockage, got 2 stents right there, and avoided having a heart attack. And trust me, as somebody who's gone through a heart attack, you do not want to do that. It is very simple, and I love Franciscan for their commitment in making sure that everybody is heart healthy. Joining us now on the show to talk about our Feel Good, Good for the Heart segment on this Friday is Jacob Gregory, who is a teacher at IPS School 39, a 6th grade teacher, as a matter of fact. And Jacob, I love the fact that kids can utilize sports to learn. That's kind of part of the deal, is sometimes I would imagine that making learning fun for young people at times can be a challenge. Take me through how the Pacers and the Fever, and you, for that matter, at IPS 39 have been able to incorporate all of it to help out with young math students at IPS.
Yeah, so to give you kind of just a little backstory on this, we were presented a couple summers ago with by a gentleman named Rico Francis. There was a partnership through Pacer Sports and Entertainment and the Lilly Foundation of a program called Math Hoops, which is the flagship program of a non-for-profit company called Learn Fresh. It is a physical board game that incorporates social emotional learning, and kids use their math to, make strategic decisions using WNBA and NBA players' statistics. So it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and then they get a little number, and it goes along with a number on a player, and they spin a spinner, and hopefully it lands in that statistical make for that player.
And with that, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead. I have a lot of notes here, so I'm all over the place.
Well, so with that, so take me through this in terms of when you first had this come about, and you probably thought to yourself, well, this is cool because this is another way to kind of reach kids, right, and have them learn math skills, but do so by looking at the statistics of, be it Caitlin Clark or Aaliyah Boston or Tyrese Halliburton and players that they know. Did you see kind of that spark that kids all of a sudden, without even knowing it, were getting involved not only in teamwork but also in learning?
Oh, absolutely. And we were working on our fact fluency, and when you flip a card over and there's a picture of LeBron James or Tyrese Halliburton or we had Kelsey Mitchell on one of our cards as well. It just kind of gets them really excited for it, and they want to use that player, and they want to get that number that goes along with the player. So, like I've said a couple of times, it's difficult to, get enthusiasm when it comes to math at school. Our club runs 8:30 in the morning on Tuesdays, and the enthusiasm is it's like we're kind of in Gamebridge, like for a game or something. Kids are like running around the room excited about everything. So that excitement is something that, we can't match, without the help of Math Hoops.
So you have the Math Hoops that's taking place over at William McKinley IPS School 39 at 8:30 in the morning. And I would imagine this probably started out with a couple of kids, and then it grew, and maybe throughout school they're talking about it. But it is still at its heart, even though it's about learning and having fun, it is a competition. And one of your students, and this is my feel-good aspect of it because I'm just thrilled for her. I love anybody that can represent the city of Indianapolis and say, you know what, I'm from Indiana. And one of your students, Ileana Mora Gomez, correct me if I said the name wrong, but
that is correct.
She went ahead and said, you know what, I'm going to represent more than just William McKinley, IPS School 39, and Mr. Gregory's class. She's going to represent all of us, and did so and brought home a little hardware. Jacob Gregory, take me through what Ileana was able to do.
Oh yeah, so there's Learn Fresh has a program. It's called the Global Championship. So with this program, there are winners and there are losers. And so 24 students from around I want to say the globe. It was Australia, Puerto Rico, and USA were nominated by their sponsor at either their club or their school, and they were hand selected by Learn Fresh to be flown out to New York City, all expenses paid, and to represent their club or school. And yes, like you said, Ileana was the representative for the Pacers, the Fever, Pacer Sports Entertainment, the Lilly Foundation, and the whole region and the whole state of Indiana. She went out there. She was paired with a little girl from the Spurs organization, and they were a couple humble little girls. They, as the games went on, they were rolling through it, and they went all the way through at the NBA headquarters, rolled through all the way to the championship, and were able to win the global championship.
So the global championship right here for Ileana representing Indianapolis. And my understanding is, Jacob, that, the best thing about this, there's an element of representing your school and representing your family. But Ileana, if I'm not mistaken, also has younger siblings and is starting to kind of pass the torch along to get them involved, right?
Yeah. Our math hoops program, I had to agree with some parents. They were like, hey, I want to sign my kid up, but I have younger siblings as well. And I was like, well, bring them along. We'll differentiate the math hoops game for them. We'll do addition and subtraction for the little kids. And she brought her second grade sister along with her, and Regina was there bouncing around the room like everybody else, 8:30 in the morning every Tuesday. So, yeah, it's kind of we're growing that math hoops tree at William McKinley.
Jacob, can you speak to the importance for – especially at IPS. I mean, I know a little about IPS. I've been involved in a lot of the different IPS schools. And for the kids to be able to kind of push the chest out a little bit and represent their school, but also have the ability to go in and be involved in something extracurricular outside the school hours, just in terms of without them even realizing it or knowing it, but learning about the importance of the discipline of that, the dedication to it, and the routine and the schedule of it. From a teaching standpoint, how beneficial has all of this been?
Oh, just, it's, I sit in math and I teach things, and the kids are like, when are we ever going to use this again? Or when are we going to use this in the real world? And I'm like, learning some of these things can take you to different places you don't know about. So like I said, there were kids across the globe that were brought to New York City because of their math skills. And we got to attend a thing at Falk College, and I'm not going to get into detail too much about that, sports analytics. And, the kids can work for all these professional sports organizations through sports analytics. So I think it just opened up a lot of those kids' eyes about like, hey, I did something special here, and it's because, I worked hard at what I did, and I'm reaping the rewards for that. And, education can gain a lot of things for me here. And it was just a very, very, and I don't think a lot of the kids, especially Ileana, I don't think she realizes how big of an event that was for her, and to bring home a global championship to the state of Indiana. That's just something like I have so much pride in it. Like I said, I had an early flight home. I was sitting on the airplane. I was getting a text right before we took off. And like, if I could have ran up and down the aisle without somebody tackling me, I would have done it, but it was just such a, overjoy for me, like just to see her win that, and to crack a smile. And I had that student all year long. It's tough to get a smile out of her, but she got some joy out of that, and it was just such a pleasure to see that.
And by the way, I would be remiss if I did not mention that this is a tradition now at 39, I guess, because you had a student last year, Giovanna Sekulovsky, did I say the last name correctly, that represented and was able to go to New York?
That is correct.
And she went to New York as part of this, got to go to the NBA draft and represent the school, and passed the torch on to Ileana Mora Gomez, who got the title this year, and we'll see what happens next year as well. Jacob, I would love to come, and I don't know even how this could work out, but you have my information. I would love to come and meet the kids, see the kids at William McKinley IPS School 39, because I'm a big believer in the public schools and the kids at the schools. I see how hard they work, and I'm glad that their work paid off, and in this case, they were able to represent Indianapolis. So congratulate Ileana for us for now, and then at some point, I'd love to be able to come by and meet the kids.
Absolutely. You're more than welcome.
I appreciate the time, and certainly congratulate her and let her know that she has made the hearts feel good for everybody in central Indiana. Jacob Gregory, by the way, from William McKinley IPS School 39. Very cool. We had a game when I was a kid, Jimmy, called Math Snake, which was a baseball kind of game where you had to answer certain math challenges to be able to move your way around the classroom. And I was not a great math student, but, man, I made sure in that particular game that I figured it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, anytime, especially – I mean, kids of all ages, when you integrate different aspects to make math or subjects that might otherwise not have full-scale retention immediately, anytime you can make it fun is always very cool.
Lots of people are weighing in on the drywall in my closet situation, and it sounds like I'm in trouble. We got to find out, does anybody have a stud finder? Eddie, you got a stud finder?
It's called knocking. You knock on the wall, and once it starts to get dull,
stud finders do exist.
In this case, all you got to do is look right across the desk, right?
I didn't say stud. I just said you have to knock.
So if I knock on the wall, so I've got to find out. Basically, they can only take the part out between the studs. Is that right?
Yes.
The part of the wall between the studs.
Yes.
Okay. I'm telling you, this is big time stuff.
It's going to be heartbreaking when you get to the house and you realize that you did it all on a stud, and then you just have to take a picture of it.
I mean, I think that's probably, in the end, what's going to end up happening here. I don't suppose they can just remove the entire closet and airdrop it somewhere, right?
No, I don't think your room is an iPhone.
I even drew like a little map for somebody of like where exactly the closet is and the whole deal. I mean, I've become very.
I mean, I feel like you're not going to know.
Detail oriented.
I feel like you're not. That's awesome. It looks like a floor plan.
Yeah,
I feel like you're not going to know whether or not you can remove it until you have somebody with expertise to look at it and say, Jake.
Do you think I'll have to pay somebody just for to come out and take a look at it, just like
an inspector?
An inspector's fee? Yes. That's my worry. Again, thank you to Franciscan Health for our Feel Good Friday. Thank you to Jacob Gregory from School 39, and thank you to Ileana for representing all of us, even those of us that don't know math very well, in a winning way. We'll come back. We'll get Jimmy's plays of the day and hand it off to John as well.
It is admittedly a massive sports weekend, final week of weekend of MLB games before the MLB All-Star break. And of course, I realize I'm the only one of the three of us that fits this category, but if you followed at all, international soccer, 2 major championship matches taking place this weekend. We'll start first with Copa America. Argentina set to take on Colombia. Argentina trying to make it back-to-back Copa America titles and bookend them between that World Cup they won in 2022. I think they achieved that. I will take Argentina to lift the cup. Let's get on a plane and head to Germany. It's the Euro final between Spain and England. We are indeed back in Deutschland one final time for the European Championship match. I will take England to capture their first European Championship in history. They've won a World Cup before. They've never won the Euros. Let's switch back stateside for baseball. We'll take the Baltimore Orioles.
Hey, root for me.
Cute fella to one on the money line as they begin a 3-game set against the New York Yankees at Camden Yards. Last one for you. Give me the Cincinnati Reds. I want Eddie to get a win tonight. We'll take the Reds to one on the money line over the Miami Marlins. Eddie, any bets from you?
I do. I'm taking no runs first inning in Detroit. Very, very friendly ballpark for pitchers. Tarek Skubal, as I've talked about numerous times throughout the season, Cy Young frontrunner for the American League, taking on the Dodgers. Dodgers lineup has not looked good lately, and they have James Paxton on the mound, so I'll take a no-runs first inning bet there in Detroit.
I realize it's not a play of the day for you, but I'll do this if it's just a casual sporting event I'm going to. I know it's less casual for you since you're a Reds fan, but will you place anything, maybe like a small $1, $2, $5 wager in the Reds-Marlins game tonight just because you're there?
Like I've said all season long, I am not betting on the Reds.
All right.
I will only bet against them.
Fair enough. Okay. Those are your plays of the day. Go Argentina,
Eddie's
go
the
England.
Pete Rose of radio.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you guys know where the Dodgers got their name? Have I asked you that before?
By the way, did you see that there's another Pete Rose documentary coming out?
There is?
On HBO, yeah. Actually looks pretty good.
Because there's not enough that I need to know more about Pete Rose, right?
I would assume.
I need to know more about Pete Rose once said I look like Ben Roethlisberger.
He once told you you look like Ben Roethlisberger.
Yes.
That was the story when he was ink blotting the poster, correct?
Correct. I have a Reds poster that has a huge blue dot on every deceased member of the Reds because before he signed it, he said, that guy's dead and that guy's dead. So now when somebody passes away, I'm like, do I need to add a dot? But yes, he looked at me and said, you look like Big Ben Roethlisberger.
I would assume the Dodgers question in terms of how they got their name, I mean, obviously that's what they carried with them when they left Brooklyn, so I would assume it has
left where?
Brooklyn. I apologize. So I would assume there's some Brooklyn tie there with the name, but I don't know.
Stand your ground. It's Brooklyn. Come on,
no
Jimmy.
idea.
Eddie, would you like to guess the origin of the Brooklyn Dodger name or LA Dodger name, depending on which way you want to look at it? I mean, obviously they came from Brooklyn as the Dodgers. So.
The dumbest thing my brain tells me is something with dodging cars, but that seems too easy. So
I do not have a guess.
Jimmy, you are correct. It was named for, and there is debate over one of two things. It was for trolley cars in Brooklyn back in the day. Some say it's because you had to dodge through the traffic of the trolley cars. Others say that the trolley cars, the wiring above it would fire sparks off, and you had to dodge the sparks as they came down. But it is most commonly thought that it's the cars themselves.
There you go.
Todd Meyer is going to come in here and argue with me and say that he has some uncle in New York that knows for a fact that that's not the case because he's a Giants fan and he knows that the Mets logo doesn't have an M in it and whatever else. But I'm telling you, that's the origin of the Dodgers.
I still think we need to try to reach out to Mets staff and just get an answer if they acknowledge the fact there's an M in the hat or not. That's all I want.
I'm telling you, yeah, no, you're right. Can you imagine if we did and they actually said, yes, that's correct? Or maybe they'd say, well, you know what? We didn't realize that before, but that's genius, and now we're going to promote it. Your weekend consists of, Eddie, we know you're going to the game. Jimmy, you are?
So, as you know, my wife and I are welcoming our first child at the end of September 27th, the due date for
24th.
Baby Cook.
24th.
Eddie's predicting the 24th because that's his birthday, and he wants the Baby Cook to share birthdays with him. But
No. Well, yeah, partially, but
having a little get-together with some friends. I know, Jake, you can't make it. Eddie might be able to, but they call it a diaper party, I guess. It's the male equivalent of a baby shower.
I went to one of those in college.
I'm sure you did. So just hanging out poolside, watching a little soccer, maybe a little UFC as well. Should be a fun weekend. You are off as well for Pocono, right?
I'm on my way right now to Des Moines, Iowa. Actually, Newton, Iowa, which is about 40 miles this side of Des Moines for the IndyCar doubleheader. Race tomorrow, race Sunday, and then back Sunday night. And we'll be back on Monday to recap the weekend in sports and get ready for Colts training camp, which is going to be here before we know it as well. So
Ed Sheeran going to be there again?
What's that?
Ed Sheeran again?
No,
I bet he's going to be in
Bryan,
Germany.
I believe is going to be there.
Ed Sheeran will be in Germany because he's been at every England match.
They got a big lineup in Iowa this year for the concerts. Headline. I think Luke Bryan's the headliner.
Nice.
But they have 2 or 3 different shows, so it's going to be should be good. Hy-Vee, the grocery store chain out there, which has been rumored to be coming to Indy for 10 years now, does a heck of a job in promoting it. John's up next. He is on remote, correct, Eddie?
I believe so. I haven't seen him here.
I haven't seen him either, so but I assume that
he's here.
He is here?
In studio.
Oh, what?
Okay.
There he is right now walking in.
John's walking in right now, as a matter of fact, so we will hand it off to him. There's no microphone for him to talk, so we just know. There. All right, there's John.
Hey, Jimmy trade all the Pacers yet? Why do you want to get young talent? Jimmy wants to trade everybody.
Draft capital. Johnny wants draft capital. All right, John's up next. We'll be back with you on Monday.